Hey guys, it's a legend. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Real Quarantine Show. You know what? We've got a bit of a bonus for you because not only do we have a brand new episode, we have actually classic episodes. Because before we came to you, we were on another network and we played a bunch of cool shows. Andy, tell the people what you thought of those old shows.
It's all these shows are great. I mean, I always say, what we do is for the love of the business. We've had great episodes. I've been able to talk with some of the guys from Puerto Rico about Puerto Rico memories. We've talked a lot of history. One of my favorites is talking not once but twice with the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller.
I mean, that's incredible. I would never have thought a year ago, a guy who loves wrestling history, that I would ever have a chance to actually talk and ask questions to the Tennessee stud. That was amazing. Elio, what kind of great memories do you have on this show?
Yeah, there are so many great episodes, and we've had a couple that come to mind. Of course, Continental, the Ron Fuller episodes, both times we had him on, as well as one of my favorites, the Madison Square Garden Glory Days.
Oh, yeah. And we've had some great people. We've had D'Lo Brown, Savio Vega. We've had some really fun guys. We've had some great old veterans. We've had some young up-and-coming stars. And that's what this show is, you're going to see in the future, is going to be all about that. We're going to encapsulate history. We're going to talk about topics of today. We're going to talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. And these little background, these classic episodes of ours, we'll go back, revisit some of the things we've done in the last year. And off and on, we'll be going forward with a whole bunch of new things. So we look forward to seeing you all. Welcome back to The Real Quarantine. Quarantine. I'm your host, the legend T. James Logan, and today we have another esteemed panel of guests, and we're going to be talking on this Canadian Thanksgiving. So all you American friends going, what the hell are they talking about food? It's Canadian Thanksgiving over here. And today we're going to talk about families. Families and Thanksgiving kind of went together there. But it's an interesting phenomenon in professional wrestling. As I was kind of researching what I wanted to do about families, I found it kind of breaks down into two categories. You either have a family that was based around a promoter who had a lot of sons or grandsons or whatever, and built a family dynasty that way, some very successful, some not successful, some had great highs and then fell. And then you get groups of families that are wrestlers. And that's going to be the tricky one to navigate, because as I was researching a lot of this, I realized some of the family names I looked up weren't even really families. You found out guys who just took up each other's names. And Andy Anderson would know all about that. But we'll, as we would talk about the Andersons, that's exactly what that is. But so today we're going to be talking about families. And first of all, I'm going to go around the circle here and introduce my guests for today. First, our reoccurring friend, the lone wolf, Andy Anderson. Andy, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here.
The lovely, beautiful Raven Lake, who unfortunately can only stay with us for a little while.
Yeah, sorry, I'm at a family dinner, so.
We understand. We want to welcome to the show once again, Chief Attakullakulla.
Thanks for having me back.
That's good to see you, Chief. And our first time was Savio Vega, WWE legend and Hall of Famer. Savio, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for thank you for the invitation. And hey, let's have some turkey, Canadian turkey now.
Well, this show, you know what, is pretty interesting, because what we like to do is we just like to talk about wrestling. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take up the topics and we're going to talk about stories, things we knew, things we heard. And first of all, we'll do a really quick around the table. We're not going to talk about them fully right here, but I want each person, when you hear families in professional wrestling, what is the number one family that pops up in your mind? Chief Attakulla.
There's several, but I would
number one. If you had to say one,
I would say the Von Erichs.
Von Erichs, fine. Raven.
There's so many. The Flair family.
One, yeah, Flair family. Okay, Andy Anderson. This will be a tough one. Are you going to say the Andersons?
Oh no, it's easy. The McMahons.
The McMahons, excellent. Savio.
The Harts.
The Harts. All right, Elio.
I'm gonna say the Harts and the Von Erichs.
Wow. Of course, the number one does not seem to work with Elio. Okay. Believe it or not, my favorite family that always pops in my head, and we'll get into them, and it's an odd one to trace, is the Windham family. And
Oh,
a lot of interesting things in that one. But first of all, let's talk about the Von Erich family. Let's talk about the Von Erich family. And sorry for blinding everyone there for a second. The Von Erich family. Here's the example, a great classic example of a wrestler becomes a promoter and then has a very large family full of young men who become stars within his circuit. They're an interesting one because a lot of people, especially in America, would consider them one of the most interesting yet tragic stories about families in professional wrestling. Interesting and unique in the fact that they had a world champion in their stable from the NWA by Kerry winning the belt once. They had a promotion that was extremely successful. They had a lot of wrestling sons within the promotion and the father who were extremely successful. They also had a few that weren't very successful who were pushed a lot. And then to this day, many of those members of those immediate family had tragedies, deaths, suicides, and other things like that. Now, Rod, I know you know a lot about the Von Erichs. We've talked about that before. So what do you think about when you think about the Von Erichs, first of all?
Of course, I think, one of the first things that comes to mind with the Von Erichs is tragedy, because all of them except for Kevin are, have died in one way or another over the years, tragically at a young age. But some very talented people. David was very talented. I think the most talented one probably of the group, even though Kerry ended up being the world champion. Kevin was very talented, but then of course they had Mike and Chris that were probably lesser. I think that's probably who you were referring to earlier. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, in this day and age, this far removed from the 80s, when you think of Von Erichs, I think most people think tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to pipe in about the Von Erichs? Any stories? Any thoughts?
I know for me, and I think Savio spent time in Texas, so I'm hoping we'll hear from him. But I know for me, this might be similar to you, James. Is for me, it was a lot of them from the magazines. I call them the history books from back in the 80s. So for me, Von Erichs, first thing I think of is Texas, and that's my association there. And I think like a lot of people that probably follow with our podcast, Kerry was kind of the main one once he went from kind of like NWA and World Class to WWE and kind of had his run there. The tragedy is unfortunate, so I mean I try to keep things in a more positive light. So if people say Texas wrestling to me, that's probably the first thing I'll think of is the Von Erichs.
Okay. David and Kerry and Kevin were also very successful in St. Louis for Sam Munchnick, and then David had a heel run, with Dory Funk Jr. down in Florida. So David was actually probably more well-traveled, and of course the Japan trips.
Yeah, really a heel Von Erich.
Yeah, he really would have kind of ventured away much. They all used to kind of go up to St. Louis, but he went. I think it was probably, what was it? Maybe 82 or 83.
That was
82.
That was when the
Florida, and he tag teamed with Dory Funk Jr. He was a heel in Florida. And then that's when he went back to Texas. That's where he found gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, and he brought Jimmy Garvin back to Texas to feud with him. And we actually talked about that feud, I think, a few weeks ago.
So he's the one to blame. Okay. All right, Savio.
Listen, that's interesting. And those 80s, in the 80s, the territories in the United States was alive. And that's when you got the Texas one. And I'm with Andy. I remember by the magazine, we don't have the cable TV yet by the time here, and that was the beginning or something like that. And don't see too much, just the pro wrestling magazine and different magazines, they show up. Locally, I was seeing some old timers that visit the Capital Sport Promotion, WWC, in that time. And what I know about them is exactly that, world-class wrestling. You got the freaks with the claw, and what's a tremendous stories what they do over there. I was like this close to wrestle for them when I was in Louisiana for Bill Watts, and I hear the guy talking about the Texas, but my run was almost done. On the company continued, when I come back to Puerto Rico, that's when Ted DiBiase, Jay Disney, Kamala, a few of the guys, Junkyard Dog, went to WWF. So that was the movement of these pro wrestlers. But the story that I hear about the Von Erichs was tremendous. And then I have the chance to see matches, and you see all the three brothers, fighting the bad guys and the people going behind them big time. I remember one time I see something where the old man come and make a big save, and the people went crazy, because they're big time over. And I agree. They're one of the first family of wrestling right there.
Okay. First of all, I gotta say, we know this as things change in the world, the claw has probably been reduced to kind of a goofy past thing in wrestling, except maybe for Lance Archer.
Well, listen to this. Yeah. Listen to this. I have the chance now to work with two of the Von Erichs in MLW.
Yes.
And when I saw them working the first time that I was there, I have the clinic eye with the experience that I have through the years. And so soon as I saw them working in the ring, they went to do some jumpings and some spots. I said, cut that. Next time you go to the ring, the first spot we're going to do is try to finish the match in the first second. How you going to do it? You're going to teach the guy, you're going to tell the people that this is your finish. And the other one is going to run, because if you put it on, this is it. So we did it. And soon they went up, the people went, yeah, so you have to do that every day, till it work. And that's the way you finish over.
Yep. Yeah, well, nice. I wasn't actually going to make fun of the thing. I was going to say it's even because of Baron von Raschke, I still have my son, my 5-year-old son, runs around giving me the claw all the time, and I pretend I remember here in Puerto Rico, you got Keely Carl Brook, or Keely Carl Croft or whatever. He come, with the just one eye lane, on one side. You got the stick, the German boots, and this face, long face. And when he put that, hey, you're going down. So, I mean, if you sell it, they buy. Oh, excellent. Raven, you got some Von Erich stuff in your head?
Not a lot, honestly. More of a Sean.
Okay. Well, you know what? There's a great example. Like, those guys really built a giant promotion around their sons. And it's sort of funny because when you do look at the videos, you see they dominate the entire show.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody gets mad about it. It works, because sometimes you get those big families and you're like, these guys again, we complain about AEW pushing the same 3 guys, but it worked for the fans. They were like rock stars, these guys. People mauled them. Women were legitimately kissing them as they went down. Yeah. It was pretty cool stuff. And I don't know how right on the history is, but I do know if you watch that Von Erich DVD that the WWE put out, the Von Erich story, it's interesting and very tragic, and really shows you how big and how quickly things can turn around by what you do. A great example is they talk about 2 of the worst things that happened in the Von Erichs show run. One of them, Fritz and his heart attack, which no one believed and disgruntled a lot of fans. And then the second one was the inclusion of the mystery cousin who was actually not related to anybody whatsoever, and that being Lance Von Erich.
Lance Von Erich.
Do you guys remember the Lance Von Erich stuff?
Yeah, and the problem with Lance is he was a local boy who went to high school there in the Dallas area, so and he was an athlete. Everybody knew who he was. They knew he wasn't one of the runners.
Yeah, that's a tough thing back in the days when you were really pushing the reality of wrestling, and then have somebody who I even believe he didn't even compete. I think a little bit before that under his regular name, and then all of a sudden becomes a Von Erich. So
he wrestled here in Puerto Rico. He wrestled here in Puerto Rico. I remember he worked this night with Abdullah the Butcher, and Abby bring a hanger, and tie him. Actually, tie him in a rope
Jeez.
and he have a good game. Ooh, I can't believe like a. But yes, he come here to Puerto Rico long time ago.
I actually do remember, and where do I know that from? Wrestling magazines. Me and Andy, that's our encyclopedia.
Yeah, the history books.
The history books.
Yeah.
So the Von Erichs, really cool example. If you think of the Von Erichs, let's talk a bit about the Canadian Von Erichs, which would have to be the Harts. Another big family. We start off with a father who was a great wrestler, starts a promotion, has a bunch of sons. Half of them go on to really big stuff. The other half just sort of disappear into weird obscurities. Who wants to talk first about the Harts? Anyone? Andy, I know you kind of know a lot about the Harts. Go on.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. What I about always people talk about the boys talk about they went to Canada for the Hart to go to the dungeon. His father just jump on you and beat the hell out of everybody. I mean, I have the chance when Owen passed, I have the chance to visit the house, and I went to the dungeon. I want to see the dungeon, so I went there. Then you have Brett, you got Owen, you got Dean. I forget the other ones. In my first, let me see, my second match in Puerto Rico as a professional wrestler with Capital Sport Promotion. When they see me and they say, "Well, you go to TV and let's see what you got." So my second match was with one of the Brett's brother, that he was married to a Puerto Rican girl. Big mistake, but he was married with the girl, and that was my second match as a tag team. I can't remember against who we wrestled, but I remember that he went to the ring and he forget to take his watch, and I'm just coming from the streets, into a bigger company, and that for me was like wow, this guy's crazy. And then from there, I just continue. But I have the chance to wrestle with him as a tag team.
Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent. Now, I guess the Harts were really unique. Like, I grew up in my area, so this is me talking about the Harts is sort of like, Savio talking about the Colognes. I grew up right there on television every week seeing the Harts. Yeah. And, I remember Bret Hart before he was signed, and I remember all these kind of things to see growing up watching them. And the Harts were pretty unique, they were just as fun. You didn't get that feeling of like, oh man, the Harts again, It was like they were like the dominant good guy faction. And the whole promotion was built on factions going up against them, trying to take them out, trying to destroy them, which logically would be kind of ridiculous to take out the guy who owns the money. But hey, we don't go that far into logic when we think wrestling these days. We think of the story, we think of the revenge and the drama. Let's not think too far about money. So, the Harts really, it was incredible. I mean, I even remember I was just starting to watch wrestling. And then when they signed Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, that was really, and of course, Davey Boy and Dynamite was for me the reason I actually started watching WWE a lot more, or WWF at the time, was just to see them, and of course, not seeing a lot of WWF from where I was. It started to trickle in, and I started to see the big things, and all the rock and wrestling stuff was going on and all that. But the Harts really had a thing, and it was so weird because they were one of those kind of groups where you look back at a lot of wrestlers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s on their resume as being in the Hart territory. And I could think back, I'm like, wow, yeah, Junkyard Dog was here with a different so-and-so, with a different name. And it's kind of incredible to see to think back, you can find all these guys who kind of cut their teeth on the start of wrestling. So anyone else got some Hart stories you'd like to throw out there?
I'll just kind of echo along for you, because I mean, when I first started watching wrestling, living in Winnipeg, for me it was the AWA, and then once I moved to Edmonton, that was my kind of first introduction to Stampede, because even at that point, Stampede didn't really get much coverage in the wrestling magazine, so there wasn't a lot to know. But that's right, like it was like the Harts. That was that was the family, that was the stable, and everybody knew it. But I think at the same time, even as a young fan that maybe wasn't as wise to the business, you could still see who the better Harts were. You could still see Brett, Sean, and when Owen came on the scene, you knew Owen was something special. Keith was okay. But I mean, and they were very open about that. I mean, he wasn't a full-time wrestler, he was part-time, and the rest of them, they would kind of come in to help out when the Harts needed backup and it became a family thing. Was it Ross? Was that the ref?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Ross, yeah.
And that's, you need to see one of the refs. And I think it was interesting. And I guess maybe, I don't know if it was maybe not to tarnish the Hart name, or maybe that was just the nature of the business and the booking style. But even with the Hart as a ref, there was never really, I don't really recall ever being too much like of an angle or anything.
No, there was never an angle.
No, he was pretty like straight down the line, which I think in itself would be pretty cool, because in 2020 to have a family member being a ref, I'm sure it would be a matter of weeks before, all of a sudden, I'm trying to be positive here. But like it's, you say the Harts are the Von Erichs of Canada, but maybe it's the Von Erichs who are the Harts of the United States.
Ooh, nationalism at its best. Rod, you got a counter over there. My American friend, do you have any counter to that? I did notice in your description, we pulled up the Lance Von Erich issue. I think the closest you could get in the Hart family, the one who was kind of like right on the edge of, was Bruce Hart, who I noticed you did not mention whatsoever.
You know what? It didn't even. It just honestly, that was an honest slip. Whether it was Freudian or not, I don't know. But that was an honest slip. I didn't omit him on purpose. It was just because even him, like him with Brian Pillman, for Bad Company, whether you like them or not. I mean, the way they were booked, the way they were pretty over. So it's tough to argue with that too. So I mean, you hear, just like anybody, you hear the stories, you hear the good, you hear the bad, you take them all together. There you have the facts of life.
Who was going to sing along that in their head?
Yeah. Well, Raven came back on. I thought maybe that'd be good timing.
Oh, Raven, why aren't you singing the facts of life? Come on.
That's one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, actually. I love Tootie. No, sorry about that. There was a little miscommunication once that it was somebody came out and gave me the wrap it up sign. So I left and I went inside. They're like, oh, you got another 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, shit. So I apologize.
That's not a problem. Do you have any last things you want to throw in about the Harts?
Just their Canadian legend. I mean, a lot of us that started in wrestling when we were young, followed the Harts.
So yeah, now I want to skip here because like we're obviously talking about families here that were promoters coming up and building around it. Let's go random and go into an actual family in wrestling, okay, that wasn't around a promoter base. And let's see, I think I know you mentioned this one earlier, Rod, and maybe it's going back a little, but let's talk about the Fullers, because there are two guys who they contributed a lot to what wrestling is today, but they may be forgotten by the younger generation right now.
They actually, though, were promoters too.
Okay. I just meant they didn't base like a bunch of sons in a promotion. They kind of,
Yeah.
Maybe I'm 100% wrong. That always happens too.
They had Robert and Ron, and then they had the cousins. And so, I mean, there were quite a few members of the family that worked in Continental, and Ron Fuller promoted that, was the owner for several years. But yeah, the Fullers were tremendous. More people are probably aware in this day and age of Robert from WCW because he did the Colonel Parker gimmick, Colonel Rob Parker. But yeah, he was a tremendous heel all across the South. I remember one time being in the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, and Robert Fuller, I don't know if they had to kill time or what, but he went out to basically cut a promo on Jerry Lawler. And he got in the ring and he set a steel chair in the middle of the ring, folding chair, folded it, sat in it, crossed his legs, and said, I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to leave until Jerry Lawler comes out. The place was going nuts, throwing crap into the ring, yelling at him for 10 minutes. And he just sat there with his legs crossed and his arms crossed and never said another word for 10 minutes. and they were literally filling the ring with trash.
That's awesome. That's heat.
And that was one of the best examples from back in that era in the early mid-80s, where you could get that much heat, and he did hardly nothing. But he was that hated. You know, he had that much heat in that territory. It was incredible. And I was probably 17 years old, 16 years old, and I still remember that day.
Good job.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, okay, so the Fullers, you know, I think Savio is not. I think Colonel Parker, didn't they keep dropping that MLW that he might be popping up soon? I thought that was a storyline before this whole COVID thing started, and I just totally forgot about that to this moment that they've been teasing.
He was there, and he was the blondes that Debashi and I wrestled at the Hall of Fame in Texas.
Oh yeah. Hollywood. No, were they? You remember the ones, Elio, the big blonde guys?
I know who you're talking about. I just don't remember the name.
Yeah. And then they broke off the one into a singles guy at the end.
Yeah, was it the Dirty Blondes? We just wrestled in Texas at the Hall of Fame show last year. Dave Debashi, my tag team partner, we do the World Power thing, but we worked them in Texas last year.
Okay.
And but yeah, he was managing them for a while in MLW.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. Now, okay, how about this one? I think I found a family. This is when I was looking for families. Sometimes you know parts of the families and you don't realize unless you really watch wrestling a lot that they're actually related. And it had to be the Smith family. This one really threw me for a loop because I always forget about because they're so weirdly diverse. You have Grizzly Smith, and then you have his sons Jake the Snake Roberts. Then you have Skinny White Sam Houston. And Rockin' Robin, three children who's so much different. You would never guess they were the same family. When you guys remember? Well, obviously Jake the Snake's still doing a lot and doing his thing. How about the other two, Sam Houston and Rockin' Robin? Anything pop into mind for you guys?
I remember. I met Jake by magazines before. When I had the chance in 86 maybe, went to Mid-South. He was there. Actually, the story with Grizzly Smith, my first story with him, I flew from Puerto Rico to Louisiana to Baton Rouge. And was a small plane, more airport, very small. At midnight, that airport closed. So anybody that's there have to sit down outside, and they turn everything off. All the lights out. So this Puerto Rican there, we know nothing in English, and I'm sitting down outside with another guy that they picked them up. I don't know, 2-3 hours before, but we are outside. Grizzly Smith just pulled in a white Impala to pick me up. About 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that, because they were in Lafayette, wrestle over there. So my plane was delayed. He's supposed to pick me up. Nothing happened. I was out. So here I am sitting outside, and here comes this big beard guy. How you doing? My English was bad, super mega bad. So he took me to the hotel. I stayed there one night. Kendall Akbar picked me. Next day, took me to the arena. Then we continue. But that was the first experience with Mr. Grizzly Smith. Then I met Jake. I always, when I see him, I say thank you to him because he took me by the hand and teach me and took me to another level when the finishes come. And he was very, very calm and explain me everything step by step in English. So I start pick up here, there, and my first one of the biggest match was a 5 against 5 in Oklahoma City, a Sunday, I remember. And many spots, 10 guys, so I really want to throw something there. And here comes Jake. This is what we're gonna do. And he take care of me. Big time. Also working with him, he gave me that DDT, and I went straight down big time and hurt my neck for real. I think that was the beginning of my neck being hurt, but I never blame him. 2 days later, I was working with my neck hurt, and sleeping in a car, falling asleep. I just went pop, and my neck just right there, pop big time, and I fixed myself. But I have the chance. Sam Houston, I saw him a couple of times in dressing rooms, but I never was there with him, working with him, too many times. But that's my experience with them. I hear the Grizzlies was very good in the ring, very heel.
Okay. Anyone else got any stories about any of them?
Rod, I'm hoping Rod's got something because I loved hearing that from Savio, so I'm hoping Rod's got something.
If somebody had a Sam Houston story, I'd love it the most.
Yeah,
but
I can't remember how long ago it was. I don't know, maybe 3 or 5 years ago, but Sam Houston was actually still working, and I was on an indie show with him. I didn't work with him, but that most of my interaction with him, other than seeing him on TV when I was younger, I think I'm pretty good.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
I remember when Barry Darsow was Crusher Khrushchev, and they had a match. I think it was on one of the Starcades, wasn't it, or something back in the day? But other than that, I haven't had too many personal interactions with him. Just once.
I've got to say, I always found it such a weird thing because, like I said, being a kid growing up reading these magazines, not getting a lot of television, I knew people from different territories only by their name and maybe some pictures. So you don't really know them. And sometimes when you find brothers, it's rare that you find a brother and sister, but brothers, you kind of saw it, like, oh yeah, that guy does look a little like him, or you read the stories and he's like them. But it was so funny because all through my life, as much as I read about Sam Houston, he seemed nothing at all would ever let you think that him and Jake Roberts were brothers at all.
Yeah, none of that family looked the same at all.
Yeah, it's so strange. And then throwing Rock and Robin really almost made my head blow up. Seeing her from others, I'm like, what? This can't be right. Someone's joshing me. This ain't real. There's no way these people are related. But they were just definitely one of the most unique families that I got to say most unique because it was just so different. So much different components, so much different people. And I guess you can't really define a family by your looks or whatever because they were a family that kind of broke that mold.
I was just wondering, Raven, did you have any experience with Robin at all?
I got to meet her at the CACs. She got a women's wrestler at the CACs, and she was a really nice woman. Same with Sam. He's at the CACs every year. Both really nice people, but I never got to work with her, obviously, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
We are going to have to dig through the vaults and find a woman wrestler who knows anything about Rock and Robin wrestling them. That would be kind of, I barely remember her. I totally, because the name, you can't forget a name like that, especially when there wasn't a lot of women wrestlers at that time. So I don't really remember much, but the name, maybe a match or two. So I'm very curious what kind of person she was like. That would be something to see. Let's throw this really weird. Let's throw a family name that they're not even really, they weren't exactly brothers, even though they portrayed themselves as. And no, I'm not going to pick the Andersons.
No.
I'm going to pick the Garvins.
Ooh.
Ronnie Garvin and Jimmy Garvin, who actually, I guess the relationship ended up being that Ronnie was actually Jimmy's father-in-law or something stepfather or something like that.
Stepfather, yeah.
Yeah, he was his stepfather, and yet they portrayed themselves as brothers, which was kind of a unique thing. I guess you guys could probably say a lot about the Garvins, right? Because I grew up watching Jimmy Garvin so much. Ronnie Garvin just a little bit. And it's probably the opposite for probably Rod. So, Rod, do you remember much about Ronnie and Jimmy Garvin?
Yeah, I grew up watching both of them a lot, actually.
Okay.
And last year,
the Texas thing.
Yeah, last year. Well, I know Ronnie mostly from Georgia.
Yeah.
The Georgia Championship Wrestling a lot, but they actually inducted him into the Hall of Fame in Texas last year in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and so I actually was set at his table. I got to meet him there last year, and actually a very nice guy. But I always thought he was very talented. I mean, he did some different stuff that you didn't see other people do, like the Garvin Stomp, which Randy Orton kind of does now, I guess. But
yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, his short world title reign was kind of nondescript.
Yeah.
Quick. Just a blip in history, but no, the Garvins, and then you don't forget Terry Garvin too.
There you go. Yeah, I was using the Google machine as you were talking, Rod.
I know Terry really well. Terry actually for a while was in the early 80s was the ring announcer for Bob Geigel in Central States out of Kansas City. And then Terry Garvin actually was one of the people that helped me get into the business.
Oh, no.
And then later on, you know, he handled the talent for WWE later on and worked there until his death. But yeah, a lot of people forget the forgotten Garvin, the third one, because I think it was Terry and Ron originally, and then later on Terry managed. Yeah, they were a tag team, and then later on he managed Ron and Jimmy.
What was the real relationship with Terry to Ronnie or
none of them were related.
No, okay.
It was Ron was stepfather was married to Jimmy Garvin's mom, but yeah, Terry wasn't related at all anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, Ronnie Garvin, he adopted the name in the mid-'60s and formed a tag team with Terry Garvin, who was billed as being his brother. And then they were together through the 60s and the 70s. And then they were managed by their other brother, Jimmy Garvin, actually Ron's stepson in real life. And then in the mid-'80s, that's when Ronnie and Jimmy had their feud, also with the Rougeaus in Montreal.
Good job, Andy.
And Ronnie Garvin is also Canadian.
Yes, a French Canadian, isn't he? Because he totally looked like a French Canadian growing up all the time.
Good job, Andy. Way to read Wikipedia.
Yes.
Right.
You know, my wife's grandfather was 100 years old, and he'd always say to me, "Ask Mr. Google," when he had a question. He was just amazed by Mr. Google. So, thank you. Well, Andy, you've now taken the role of a 100-year-old man who will ask Mr. Google.
Thank you. You know what? I was one of those people that was the Google machine.
Yeah.
But henceforth, thou shall be known as Mr. Google.
Yeah.
Well, Savio, did you ever have any run-ins with the Garvins anywhere in your career?
No, just by television, magazines, and stuff like that. Never. Jimmy, yes, I met her before. No, with Ronnie, and but just what I see is on magazines, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I should say, Chief, when I said about not forgetting the Texas part, it was actually because I grew up so much with AWA. That's where I always think of Jimmy Garvin. I always forget he was in world class, you know? Yeah. Mr. Google has a question. Yes, Mr. Google.
Yes, I was looking at Mr. Google because I had something in my head, and then when Savio was responding, it kind of made me think, so I had to scroll further. I don't have the time frame here, but it says that somewhere in about 1988, that Ronnie Garvin also feuded with Carlos Colon over the WWC Universal Heavyweight Championship during trips to Puerto Rico.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, we're talking about okay. Let me go back. Hannah Stone, Ronnie Garvin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know where. And what's another guy? Maybe I confused the name. He was like curly hair or something like that.
That was Jimmy Garvin.
Yeah, the so-called brother.
There was Terrence Garvin too.
Jimmy. Okay.
Later on, I was thinking of it.
Okay.
And he looked very much like Jimmy.
Yes. I know who you're talking about, Chief.
Jimmy Garvin.
I work with Ronnie Garvin.
There you go. That's better.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
This makes more sense.
Now I'm connecting. I'm connecting people. That's one of the Garvin. The only Ronnie Garvin. Then I went like, damn it, because I have the Jimmy Garvin, the mouth of the South, in my head, and Ronnie Garvin, and it was Jimmy Garvin. No. Yes, I worked with him. I mean, solid guy. He was in good shape. We worked, a few times in Puerto Rico. I was a young guy by the time we compared it with the experience. They already maybe have 8 to 10 years more, experience than me, and they helped me. They helped me a lot to make my characters and stuff like that. Yes, I worked with Ronnie, and yes, he worked here in Puerto Rico many times. He always come with his towel and serious, and the work was solid. Mm-hmm. Love to work with him. And yes, I remember now, Mr. Ronnie Garvey, the hand of stone.
Hands of stone.
And we put him over. He have a match. I remember the build up. A match him against the Invader. Invader have the fist gimmick too, and they have a big battle where the people fill the houses to see the competition and to see the matches.
Awesome.
But yes, I had the chance to work with him. Oh, yes.
Excellent. You know,
And don't forget that the highlight of Ronnie Garvin's career would probably be the feud for the AWA International title with Greg Gagne.
Wow.
International title. Oy vey.
wow, that's right
I
up
thought
there
you were
with the
going to go back to
European
it. I
Championship.
thought you were going to say when he was doing the ref thing.
oh yeah.
In the dying days of the AWA.
Oh yes.
Oh.
Still as a heel, Garvin wrestled in the American Wrestling Association in late 1988, around the same time frame that he was doing Puerto Rico, and feuded with Greg Gagne over the AWA International Television Championship.
oh, it's even just that.
Hey, I'm glad I have Andy here to back me up on all these facts.
Hey,
Yes.
it's not me, man. It's Mr. Google.
Yeah.
Now, Rod, you said something that was very telling, and that was the blip of the World Championship for Ronnie Garvin. And
Yeah.
I remember being a super big Ronnie Garvin fan before he won the belt, and very excited on the build-up. And then when he won the belt, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" And then he lost the belt not very much later. And the most hilarious thing about it is it was almost the exact same match, with just the end was different. Like they did the exact same match again in the cage, move for move, and then ended it with a different move.
You know, in between the time when he won it from Flair and dropped it, they didn't have him. I think like almost 60 days went by. They never had him defend it, so he had no title defenses.
Yeah, he had no title defenses, and it happened like less. He won at the beginning of the summer and lost it at the end of the Great American Bash stuff. So it was because I think it was the beginning of the Great American Bash. He won it.
Actually, it was in September, not the beginning of summer.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Google.
Yeah. Oh, this is like the right piece right here. So I'm just kind of following along. Yeah, it was September 25th, 87. Garvin defeated Flair. With the NWA, with the NWA holding Starrcade the same day that WWF was holding its first Survivor Series, Crockett chose to face the strong WWF competition by having Flair win the title. Therefore, he had to lose it in the first place. So whoever won it was only going to be a placeholder. So it says that most wrestlers declined the offer, but Garvin, assuming that at 42 years of age, this may be his last chance to hold the major NWA title, accepted to fill the role. And he held the title for 2 months before losing it back to Flair at Starrcade.
Unfortunately, it became a blip unless you really knew him.
Yeah.
You wouldn't remember it. Ah, that's
But
sad.
hey, we're
'cause Ronnie
talking
Garvin
about
was
it, so
great.
that's good.
Yes. Yes. Luckily he got the people who are fans of Ronnie Garvin, and we're going to keep talking about that. All right. So moving on to families. Oh, yes. Raven.
I just got the high sign. Turkey is on the table. But if you guys can some point in time during the show talk about when you talk about the Vachons, make sure you bring Luna into it.
Yep.
There's also Dora and Debbie Coombs, really important women that came in through as a family through the couple of generations in that family. And you can always throw out the Hall family if you want to too.
Who?
He's like, who? We'll talk to you later, Raven.
Are you sure that doesn't mean you have 15 more minutes?
No, I can see the turkey. I can smell it. It's calling my name.
So it means if you ate really quick, you could get back out here and talk about those women wrestlers.
I tell you what, if I get done fast enough, I'll shovel it in my face, and if I can get back out here fast enough, we'll do it.
In between the turkey and pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
Yes, between dinner and dessert.
Because obviously we're a much sweeter treat than pumpkin pie.
Well, some
You could say we're custom built for your heart.
You know what? And a lot less calories too.
Good night, fellas.
And that's how you lose women co-hosts on a wrestling show.
Yeah.
Oh my. Okay. Sorry. Before she said that, who was I transitioning into? You know what?
You mentioned before the Windham too.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to get to them. We're definitely going to get to them. Yeah, let's do them now. Why not? The Windham family. Okay. Interesting. We have the start, Blackjack Mulligan. And this is what, okay, I hope Rick Serrano III is listening to this, because he actually had a whole rant of how he thought Barry Windham was the worst horseman ever.
Really?
Okay. But yeah, exactly. We're all going to gang beat him up later. But anyways.
Wait, who's Rick Serrano III?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then when I said, what, you mean Blackjack Mulligan's son? He goes, oh, they were related? No, okay, we're going to throw some knowledge down on you, Rick. Just because you're from New York doesn't mean you get to just automatically host a show. You got to put some homework in here. All right. So we have Barry Windham. And this is a whole mixture of weird stuff. I don't want to say weird, but I guess that closeness and camaraderie that wrestling has. But this one, actually produced some big name stars. Okay, so we start off with Blackjack Mulligan. He has 2 sons. He has Barry Windham, one of the best wrestlers. I don't care what anyone says, was one of the best wrestlers, I think, of the 80s and 90s. Well, maybe not so much in the end of the 90s, but definitely in the 80s. Of course, he had Kendall Wyndham, he who shall not be mentioned. And then now Barry had a successful tag team with Mike Rotundo, who I remember, who you fans might remember as IRS from.
And that's another wrestling family right there too.
Well, kind of. They kind of intertwine here because what we have is Mike Rotundo marries Barry Windham's sister and ends up having a couple sons, one of which is Bray Wyatt. So all of a sudden we've got like these degrees.
Well, and what about the other one?
Which is the other one? Oh, Bo Dallas?
Hey, but he's former tag team champion, still WWE, still TV. Give him some respect.
Former NXT tag.
Well,
he's a former NXT
still around.
champion. Yes. You know what? I've always liked Bo. I've always liked him.
Are you a non-believer?
Believer. But he has not been treated very kindly by the WWE.
Well, just because he's not treated kindly by WWE does not mean he should not be treated kindly by WPOV.
Perfect. Elio, can you bump him out of the room or not mute his mic?
for calling him out on his stuff? Sure.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, let's talk some Blackjack Mulligan because, man, when I was a kid, the Blackjacks and him, they were the coolest. I don't know why I like those guys so much. They were big. They were big Texan guys. They had the goofy cowboy hats, and I loved it. And I mean, how big was that guy anyways? Blackjack Mulligan, he was legitimately super big, wasn't he?
Like 6'6".
He was huge.
Yeah.
I listen. I the first time I met him, I met it at the airport here in Puerto Rico. We Capital Sport Promotion (WWC) have him and Barry, and both I met him the same day at the gate. We went to, I believe, was Trinidad and Tobago to wrestle there. And when I shake his hand, it was a big, huge hand. And he was a big guy, man. He was a bear. What a nice person. I just met it there. Don't talk too much with them because my English it was off completely. And I just say hi to them, and I just stop and look at him. He was huge guy. Like I said, when I shake his hand, man, a big hand. Then I saw him, of course. In action, WCW, he was a great talent. He is a great talent. Maybe like they say, the worst of the Horsemen. Maybe because when he arrived there, was maybe more attention on the other guys. But he was great. He was a good heel too.
Savio, the only person who said that was Rick Serrano, and nobody else would ever say that Barry Windham was the worst Horseman. I'm pretty sure that Paul Roma. Who? He's just somebody. He hosts our sister show. He's just a host of our sister show who one day decided to take it upon himself to say that Barry Windham was the least of the Horsemen. Paul Roma holds that in everyone's heart.
Do you think worse than Steve McMichael?
Yes. Watch Paul Roma. At least Steve McMichael had a Chihuahua to entertain you with.
Well, at least Paul Roma had the build.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah, sir.
Steve McMichael's a friend of mine, and he's a much better friend than Hulk Hogan.
Oh, nice.
No, but everyone is a much better friend than Hulk Hogan. We've determined that every episode. Hulk Hogan's just not a good friend. Okay. Oh my goodness,
Lordy.
People are just
sorry. So seriously, just for a quick sec. So how do you know him through wrestling, or was it like a football thing? How do you know Steve?
Yeah, I know him kind of through wrestling. We became friends. He does there's a celebrity sports golf tournament over by Chicago every year. Yeah, and they have some of the former Bears, and then they have some wrestlers there. And oddly enough, I don't play golf, and I'm not that famous, but they have me there every year. And so over the years, Steve's there every year, and he's part of the organization of it, and I've become friends with him. I think I've done
I know your secret.
7 times.
I know your secret. I know your secret.
Oh,
you know my secret?
You don't play golf, but you the ones who watch the ball.
Yeah.
I swear, Chief, if you had said that you shared a love of Chihuahua breeding, I would have fallen on the floor right then. I'm sorry, that would have been the best answer ever of how you knew Sean Mongo McMichael.
But very cool story nonetheless.
Yes.
But yeah, Steve's actually a nice guy, and he's a great storyteller. He can tell you lots of stories.
I bet.
He actually said that he has wilder stories from his short time in wrestling than he had from all of his years in the NFL.
I believe that too.
Believe that. So Barry Windham. Okay, so first of all, I guess I'm not sure what the appeal. Well, obviously the size and ornery was what made the Blackjack so big, especially Blackjack Mulligan, right? And I know this is a weird thing to say, but the way he carried himself too, you kind of had the feeling he was like one of the ultimate good guys. He was this super big guy who would be really nice. He would be a way better friend than Hulk Hogan. You knew he'd be a good friend. And I mean, the reason why I ever think, especially in my mind, that he's so big is I recently was going through YouTube and I came across a bunch of this old wrestling stuff. And somebody had put this, the Clash of Belts or something, this thing from Florida, where it had the whole card on there. And one of the matches had Blackjack Mulligan teaming with the Road Warriors, and he looked bigger than they did.
Wow.
He kind of towered over the Road Warriors. And I was like, holy crap, I didn't realize he was really that big, And but it was interesting taking on Kevin Sullivan, who's actually pretty small compared to all those guys.
Well, you think of him next to he we name.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And which I had to laugh. Purple Haze, who Mark Lewin, I remember hearing about him from my grandmother growing up, so it was kind of interesting to see him. And Bob Roop, who looked really ridiculous in this time period because he had half his head shaved and
that's when they were the whole group. Did they have a name? With Kevin Sullivan, where he was like the leader, like the kind of cultish thing.
Yeah.
Did they have Nancy with them yet, or no?
No,
at that
not
point?
in that
No,
one.
not the Fallen Angel.
But going on with this story, they did have a title defense on there, and let's get into him. Barry Windham with an incredible match against Ric Flair on this card. And Barry Windham, man, I always thought he was like very tall, but it seemed like he had that perfect wrestling look, the wrestling body for a guy that was big. You look at prototypical wrestlers, and sometimes you see wrestlers, and it seems like in the wrestling world, these guys who are around 6 feet tall but athletic seems to be the prototype wrestler, right? So it was weird to see like Barry Windham being like 6 inches taller and bigger and heavier, but he wrestled like a wrestler, I always found him very, very exciting and interesting, even back when he was with Mike Rotunda, who I was never the biggest Mike Rotunda fan, I'm going to have to say. I just always thought he was the second go-on guy. And boy, IRS was just embarrassing. That whole, everybody had to be a garbage man or the plumber. Well, we went into that in the gimmick show. But I really enjoyed Barry Windham. What do you guys think of Barry Windham? And did any of you guys ever have a chance to work with him?
No, I don't have never have the chance to work with him. Like I said, the only time that I saw him was there for Trinidad. He in Puerto Rico maybe for a big show. Mm-hmm. And after that, he went to WCW and never see him again.
Okay. All right. Rod, you ever come across him?
No, actually, oddly enough, the only one of the Wyndhams I've ever met was Blackjack.
Okay. And Andy, do you have any stories or anything you can think of?
No, more just as a fan from, like you said, the tag team days in WWF with Mike Rotunda and, the run in WCW as a singles, like the babyface before being a part of the Horsemen. Mm-hmm. I'll second your assessment there with him, though, like being that taller guy. I mean, a lot of times, especially I think with WCW being more wrestling centric at the time, kind of like in like the 80s and the early 90s, it's like you had Sting, who was, I mean, he was probably like 6'1", 6'2". He's not the tallest guy, right? Like, but still like the blonde hair, and then like like you said, like the athletic, the muscular build. But Windham was almost like another. But the taller blonde, he'd almost be maybe closer to Hogan, kind of like height wise. Yes. And then with the blonde hair, I mean, and he relatively tan, but I mean, he just didn't have that like the muscular physique. But yet, like to me, it was like a rugged physique. Like I mean, if he was he a football player in the past? I can't remember.
I think he was. He was.
But just the guy that could, like you said, he was like a wrestler's wrestler. Looked like he could wrestle. Looked like he could handle himself. Just like a tough SOB.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, he also has a whole bunch of like big matches of like 60, 90-minute matches under his belt, which you guys can attest at that high level is a pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, fighting, I know he has a few with Ric Flair, and I mean, going 90 minutes with Ric Flair, that's a lot of movement back in those days. It wasn't exactly sitting
That's
around.
a good teaching class right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this one, I'm not sure, and maybe if nobody has an opinion, I get it. And maybe you never met this guy, but maybe you saw him, recall seeing his stuff. But let's talk about Kendall Windham. He seems to be the one person that history kind of makes fun of a little bit. And I remember seeing him also on this card and it's watching him wrestle a young Muta, who was one of Muta's first matches down in Florida. And it was actually, I didn't find him that bad. He looked awkward. He was obviously very tall and very skinny compared to his brother or his dad. But I'm not sure. What did you guys, does anyone have any weigh-in about Kendall Windham, what they remember seeing?
I saw a lot of his work back in the day, and it wasn't bad. I think it was just that he was so thin and lanky.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was fairly tall, he didn't look like a wrestler. He didn't big enough to be a wrestler. He looked too thin. I think a lot of the people in the crowd probably thought I'd kick this guy's ass.
They'd probably be very wrong, but yes, that's
right.
But I mean, this for me, if I may, this is my time. I think just about any episode that I'm a part of, I'm always going to bring up kind of, history, society, the evolution of business, the evolution of society. In the 80s and 90s, there weren't very many small guys, very rare. There weren't very many thin guys. I mean, even for Greg Gagne, that was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
Stretch.
I mean, there's another family we can talk about too, and for the way he was booked or whatever. But I think that's kind of like what she's saying there was at that time, just not believable. I mean, you fast forward 20 years, you put him in like in this century, and he'd be fine. Because he'd be able to fit in because it's so much more broader and it's the more entertainment versus like the wrestling, the fighting, and again to what Rod said, there was the time and up until I don't know, anybody could kind of go with me on this one here, maybe mid 90s, where as a fan, you really shouldn't be looking at that, watching this going, oh, I could kick that guy's ass. I could kick that guy's ass. This is my, I wouldn't want to run into that guy in a dark alley. I wouldn't want to run into that guy in a dark alley. Kendall Windham, I could take him.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Good, interesting thought. And that's true. Before you got the big, huge guy, maybe the muscle here, but you got the biggest, tallest guy. Maybe because the dad and brother was in wrestling, so he had the door open. In another situation, was maybe hard for him to be in the group, of this big, huge professional wrestlers.
Okay,
that's fair too. Yeah.
Now, why don't we take a quick look at Bray Wyatt? I mean, here's now the newer part of that generation of this family. Here's a guy who.
But this is the Rotundo side, though, right? We're going on the.
Well,
Rotundo
they're kind of so intertwined.
I guess
his grandfather is still Blackjack Mulligan.
Fair enough.
Yeah, this is definitely still So I'm gonna say look at Bray Wyatt's doing now. I mean, he had a bit of a struggle at the beginning. It seemed he was hot and cold, pushed and stopped. But now finally, the Fiend, or as he's known now, is a main event guy within the WWE, one of the biggest company in the world. He is one of the top. I'm not sure if he's a good guy, bad guy. It's hard to tell these weeks as they're shuffling everything around. But let's talk about that. Here's a guy who now he's another big representation of that family. Ironically, though, I have a hard time physically seeing his uncle or his grandfather in him on the Wyndham side. What do you guys think of Bray Wyatt?
I remember him in the 90s when he was a baby, him and his brother. That's the only thing that I see. And now they already been, I don't know how long with WWE. And that's the only territory they've been, the biggest probably territory that they run. I don't know if something around home they work, maybe yes, to train and be better. But he's good. What he's done is good. I mean, the way they doing it is, so up and downs. They know what they do. But as a character, and good. It looked like he's a good hand
Okay.
in the ring.
Anyone else want to weigh in on Bray Wyatt?
I'm just going to go, kind of reacting to your comment about not really seeing the grandfather side of it.
Yeah.
I think, the bloodline may be there, but I think it's one of those things like, and I have one particular picture in mind that I've seen, and I'm sure if you haven't seen it, it probably wouldn't be too hard to find, but it's like a Rotundo family picture or whatever. And it's got like Mike, and then it's got Bray, Bo, and then there's the daughter.
Yeah.
And you can tell they're Rotundos. Like
Okay.
Rotundos. It's like the facial features, the resemblances that way. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Anyone last thing before we go on to the next family? No? All right. Let's go a family with great origins in the AWA. Larry the Axe Hennig and his offspring.
Ooh.
Now, Larry the Axe Hennig. Here's I remember seeing this guy, being like when I was probably 13 or 14 watching AWA. And he didn't strike me as like a athlete per se. He was just a very big dude who was very impressive and strong. And what I don't mean is I'm not saying he wasn't an athlete. I'm just saying he was built like this big, hairy mound of a man who had this axe move he did where he like slapped the crap out of you. He was such an interesting part of my childhood because it was at that transition. He was right at the end of where wrestlers were stopping from being just big barrel-chested dudes to like all of a sudden guys like the Road Warriors and Hulk Hogan and the big muscle guys were creeping up into the main thing. But you also had the guys like Rick Martel and the guys who were of average shape but had to up the skills to be in there. And unfortunately, it seemed like some of those guys at the end of the AWA, they had great careers, but it seemed like they were right on the bubble of not fitting in with the new generation of what wrestling was becoming, at least cosmetically. Now, Larry the Axe had a great career. I didn't even look it up, but I'm pretty sure I remember him holding some like tag team titles a few times in AWA. I don't ask Mr. Google. I don't think he picked up very many singles belts, but I remember he had a son that came along, a son by the name of Curt Hennig. And Curt Hennig was, I remember watching this guy grow up in the AWA and thinking, man, I just loved watching him progress. I remember he had this goofy ass looking tag team partner who had is a white guy with a 6'6".
Hey, this is a buddy of Savio's. This is a buddy of Savio's.
No, but I mean, I'm just saying at that time,
Scott
Hall looked ridiculous. Did he not?
Yeah.
Even he must have thought that when he had the big giant curly hair, the pink shorts and the But watching Curt progress through the AWA, becoming the AWA world champion, becoming the biggest heel, and then moving on to Mr. Perfect, and what a great career he had in the WWE, which, it still feels like, even though you realized he didn't exactly die that young, it still felt like there was still so much more he could have achieved in the world of wrestling.
I agree.
And he was something like, first of all, talk to me, Andy. I know you know Larry the Axe. Give me some memories of Larry the Axe in your mind.
You know what? Similar to yours, mine are just early days. Not early days for the AWA, but early days as a wrestling fan was Larry the Axe, and I remember him being around. I remember him as you described him, just the big, thick guy, burly, had the elbow for the finish, the axe. I remember that's kind of to that extent there. I can go kind of more into Curt, the early AWA days, especially even before Scott Hall, sometimes when he would tag with Greg Gagne, and you kind of had like that multi-family kind of team there. I remember I don't have this description from back then, but looking back, knowing what I know now and looking back, it's like he was just very fresh-faced, very milk and cookies. I mean, that, kind of like Greg was too. I remember being surprised when he did like an eventual heel turn. And at that time, that was a time where a babyface could simply grow a beard, and all of a sudden he was a heel. Good times, nice and simple. We'll probably go into talking a bit about Joe as well. But because this is kind of like my only kind of personal story, which I think is very cool, and I don't know how many people can say they've done this. So in my time in Puerto Rico, when I was there 99 basically through 2003. And so I was part of the IWA family. And then, of course, the main competition was WWC Capital, which was Carlos Colon's company. So I'm sure we're going to talk about the Colons at some point. And so Carlo, we'd have our shows. We were awesome. We were doing what we were doing. And Carlos would still bring in, names from time to time as well. So at one point, this would have been, I'm trying to remember the exact year. So it might have been 2000. Savio might know the years better than I do. Because Fidel was still over at Capital. I think Ricky Santana was still over at Capital. And they brought in Kurt. They brought in Kurt Hennig to work with them. And so one night, as so would often happen after shows, we would get back, whether it was IWA, whether it was WWC, and in Isla Verde, Puerto Rico, on the main strip, there was a bar there called Loopy's. And that was that was like one of the main hangouts. So, and it was never planned. It would just be like, guys would go there. And if you saw guys, hey, how's it going? How are the shows? Whatever, we'd have the talks. And on this particular night, I can't remember who else I was there with as far as IWA guys go, but Fidel Sierra was there. His wife Fantasy was there. I believe Ricky was there, and they had brought Kurt with them. And I remember sitting at the table, and this was the first time meeting Kurt, getting to talk with him, telling him, some of the stories about watching him from WWF, watching from AWA. He was super cool. He was awesome. Fidel was very complimentary, and actually I don't know if maybe Fidel and Ricky, maybe they were already over with us. I can't remember, but they were there. And I know that, they were friends, but I remember Fidel put me over huge to Kurt, just, young guy, learning, but heck of a worker. He brought up who one of my favorites was, he would not speak of. And, so what I was privy to at this point was, I guess Kurt really liked his shots of Jack. And so it's like, okay. And, you guys may not know this, Savio may remember, I'm not a drinker. I've never been drunk in my life. I've had alcoholic beverages here and there as this story plays out, but, I've never, that's just never been my thing. So, there's like, okay, we're going to, you seem like a cool guy, whatever. We're going to have a shot. Cool. So before I have the shot, and again, I'm, very green when it comes to drinking. So this Kurt says, okay, well, you got to do this. You got to do this the Hennig way. He says, before you take your, as you take your shot, don't just shoot it straight. As you pour it in, you got to gargle it. And so, and everybody was straight faced. So everyone played along, and whatever. I did it. I gargled it. Now, for me, thankfully, and because I've had some, so whether it's Jack, whether it's tequila, a lot of these drinks that people seem to make cringe, I'm fine. So, I gargled it and I drank it. It was fine. It didn't bother me. I think even if it did bother me, just because of the company, I would have no-sold that like a son of a gun.
Yeah.
Regardless. So I had it. So that was cool. So I had that shot with Kurt. Fast forward, I don't know how many years it was, to here in Edmonton, Alberta, WWE done a show. And afterwards, I went to the bar to meet up with some of the guys that included MVP, who was a former IWA alumnus. So I was sitting with Joe, and there was a couple other guys there, and we got to talking about his dad, and he was saying how much he loved being a part of the business. And as I was telling him stories about, meeting his dad and the times there, he's like, yeah, this is the kind of thing, that I like. And so I told him the same story about the Jack, and he's like, well, he says, you know what? He says, you got to have a shot of Jack with me too then. So I said, okay, well, I don't know how many people can say that they've done this, so I'm going to do this. So I shared a shot of Jack with him. We laughed about the whole gargling thing. So I did the gargle too, whatever. So even though I've probably only had, I think I've literally had 3 shots of Jack Daniels in my life, and 2 of those are with Kurt Hennig and with his son, Joe Hennig.
That's very cool.
Nice.
God
Where was Larry? Where was Larry before?
Yeah. At that point, I think I might have been a little underage. So unless it was like a little shot of ice.
You are alcoholic.
So thank you for allowing me that platform to share that story. But that's my cool Henning connection father-son story. So
That's excellent. That's excellent. I noticed on our camera we have Rudy Gonzalez has just joined us in. Rudy, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Great. We're just going over the families of wrestling, and I know we've you missed the couple that we were going to talk about with you, but we've done the Von Erichs, and but that I know you did mention, and it was on my list. You want to talk about the Blanchards, Joe Blanchard,
The
and
Blanchards, Tully, and then now there's Tessa
and Tessa too. So why don't we start first of all with Joe Blanchard? He was a guy who was now. This is going further before my time. So was he an actual wrestler? I know he was a promoter. Was he also?
Yeah, he wrestled. He wrestled years ago. I think he got broken in by Vern, if I'm not mistaken.
Jolton Joe, was he not?
Yes, Jolton Joe Blanchard had wars with Fritz von Erich, from what I understand. Also,
can anyone tell me a bit about him? As the guy who doesn't know anything about Joe Blanchard except that he's Tully's dad and was a promoter.
I heard that Vern made a comment one time years ago that Joe Blanchard was one of the best athletes he'd ever been around.
Wow. Yeah, from
that's
a big thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, well, let's obviously talk about Tully Blanchard now. I love this because we have a few friends who are newer fans. Maybe they're not in the 80s, and they couldn't understand because they see Tully now and they wonder why he's hated. Wow, I know why he's hated. Go look up some of his stuff. This guy had something about him that made you want to punch him in the face when he just would say hello to you. He was like he was the biggest dick as a wrestler, man.
Back in the day when there was Vern and his son Greg Gagne. Greg was a babyface. Mm-hmm. There was Fritz, and he was a promoter, and his kids were all baby faces. Mike Graham, Eddie Graham, Mike was a baby face. Mm-hmm. All the promoters that had their kids wrestling, the kids were all baby faces, except for Tully.
That's awesome.
I never realized that. So one day me and him were talking, and for some reason it was like, everybody, fell in love with the promoter's son and that type of stuff. And they're putting in deals where the promoter's son got beat up. And so, by the top heel who took advantage of him because he was a young kid or whatever. And Tully was like, I wanted to be different, which is funny because that's what I try and preach to guys all the time is try and be different, try and stand out. Tully was like, I want to be different. And, my personality didn't lend itself to being the good guy, goody two shoes. So I was just me. And that worked. And Tully was, if you see him, he wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the strongest guy. He was just like someone just said right now. He was just a dick.
Yeah.
And people hated him. Here in San Antonio, people were like, all right, Joe, we love you. And Tully would come out and F you, you suck, and that type of stuff.
So real quick, I'm just trying to think from a historical perspective. Was Tully at any point in his career ever a babyface?
I think so. They did a deal. Yeah, Tully left the area when I.
I think we got a bit of a freeze up there.
Started when I came in. So when he was later, Tully left to the Carolinas, and then so here was Jonathan Bushmiller, the sheep herders, and they had this thing called the Commonwealth Army. And Joe Blanchard was the promoter trying to get rid of him. And so he brought in Tully in the middle of this big storyline to, one day Jonathan Boyd attacked Joe and beat him up and all stuff. And so Tully comes back to the area for a couple of shows to get his dad's revenge. And so, yeah, Tully was a babyface for a little bit and he was hot. But that didn't last too long, though.
Yeah.
He was there for a little while, and then he went back. He was back to being a bad guy again.
Fair enough.
This is a case of the Nick Bockwinkel Sheik Adnan.
Yeah.
3 weeks as a good guy, and then
although by the sounds of things, that to me seems like the only way that you could probably, especially back then, make Tully a viable babyface is that he's coming back to defend his family's honor, especially when Dad was such a big babyface.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Like really, like
exactly.
what else are you gonna do to make like? Cause to me, that's like like Ricky Steamboat, like kind of like lifelong babyface kind of thing. Like to me, like Tully Blanchard, that's like lifelong heel. Like there's just he shouldn't be a babyface.
Well,
Right, right.
One
When
thing I did. Oh, sorry.
When
Go ahead.
Tully and Gino Hernandez, they were a huge heel tag team down there in Southwest Championship Wrestling. And when they finally split up the team, Tully remained heel and Gino turned baby.
Which is
Right.
crazy because to me it's the same thing. Most of Gino to me seems like heel too.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a huge baby face when he turned. But yeah, they didn't turn Tully,
So-
they turned Gino.
So what happened was they were in because I was now I was in the area now and watching everything. So what happened was Tully and Gino had a title match against the champions, the Grapplers, and they did a couple of deals where Gino, one of the Grapplers, or Gino went to go hit one of the Grapplers, and he moved out of the way, and he accidentally hit Tully, and Tully went to go tag in Gino, and when Tully didn't see, one of the Grapplers punched Gino, and Gino fell off the ring. So when Tully went to go tag Gino, he wasn't there, and so that makes Tully pissed, and so they did a deal at the end where Tully made the little comeback, and then he got cut off, and then Gino got tagged in. He makes a comeback, and Tully's on the side of the ring, selling his injuries, I guess you could say. And then Gino rolls up the grappler, but as he's doing so, he runs the grappler into Tully, and they fall. I'm sorry, opposite. The grappler runs Gino into the ropes, and Gino hits Tully right when Tully turns around to see Gino coming at him. So Tully falls off the ring. The grappler rolls up Gino. Gino rolls it all the way through and then ends up pinning the grappler. 1, 2, 3. Gino wins. He grabs the belts. He's jumping up and down. He gives the belt to Tully. Tully, looks at Gino for a second like, you son of a gun, and just nails him. And when he did that, it was Don Carson as the manager for the Grapplers. And so when Tully nailed him, the three heels, the Grapplers and Don Carson, kind of like, oh shit, they all stopped and looked, and the place went nuts, just like, ooh. And then, F you, Tully, you son of a bitch, you mother. And then, you beat up Gino for a little while, and then Gino made his comeback, and Tully got out of the ring, and the place was just Gino, and Gino played it up, perfectly. He stood around the ring and looked around like, you guys are cheering for me, and he pointed to himself and that type of stuff, and the place got louder, and it was just one of those moments you're like, holy cow, that's how you make a
Yeah, and it was great the way they did it too, because they actually turned him, but they had two heel tag teams,
right
in that match, which was unusual for that day.
Yeah.
Now, I find it funny is sometimes when I look back at the videotapes and some of the network stuff where they're showing like old stuff with Tully Blanchard, right? I realize I've concentrated more when I was younger on the more main events like the Ric Flair things and stuff like that. And I didn't, I've watched them, but I didn't pay as much attention as I am now. And all I'm seeing when I'm watching matches with Tully in it, especially matches with him and Arn Anderson, is how aggravating he is to anybody, no matter their size, no matter how good they are. He's pushing out, he's getting into it before the thing starts. Arn's kind of standing back, chuckling a bit, most of it. And he is just like this jerk, just spoiling for a fight at a bar on a Saturday night. And,
he's like that yappy. It's like the yappy dog kind of.
Yeah. And he didn't bag away a lot. Sorry?
He's like that guy with the small man syndrome who has that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what made it actually a little more effective was the fact is, yes, as the bad guy, sometimes he'd run away, but not as much as you would think. A lot of the times he'd sit there and take the punch and get up and still be yapping and going at it and cheating. So I think that's what made him such an effective jerk.
And
that's
the thing,
blew me away.
And the thing is that is that's really Tully.
Mm-hmm. Is it?
I've known Tully since I got out of high school. I mean, for years and years, and he's always been that arrogant guy. I've always got along with him. We've never had crosswords or anything like that, but I've watched him and how he communicated with other guys and making little snide comments that, somebody would like, you son of a gun, I can't believe you said that. That type of stuff,
So he was living it.
I believe it.
Living it.
I believe it.
He is what he looked like.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And of course, in that next generation, we have his daughter, Tessa Blanchard, who has made a great name for herself in a relatively short time in her career. She's she's won the Impact World title, which is very interesting for a woman to win a man's title in this day and age. It's hard to tell in this whole COVID thing exactly where her career is going, because I know right now, I guess she got married to some guy in Mexico. So
She got married to Daga.
yeah. So, but it seems like she's been reluctant to leave that country because he might not be put back into America. So there's that whole thing. So we're not sure where that's going, but you got to give her props. I mean, it's a tough war. It's even tougher for women independent wrestlers these days to make a big splash anywhere, so kudos on her.
I know like a few years ago, she had a lot of heat, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess she said something she shouldn't have. I don't know. I don't know the whole story. So
yeah, I've been skirting around that issue.
There was a lot of talk of, there was a lot of talk of blackballing her, and no one wants to book her and stuff like that. But she's made a name for herself, and through hard work, from what I've seen. I don't talk to her that much. I don't talk to her at all, really. But it's just from what I've seen from the outside looking in. And she's made a name for herself.
I guess the only place that she's really going to have problems with is the WWE is very much not enthralled with some public comments that female wrestlers of color have said, and Spanish wrestlers who have said things that she said to them in the ring, and not in a I don't know, in a cheerleading way. I guess she just has said some things in the heat of the moment that were very taken as racist. But
it's kind of helped her character, though. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that in this day and age that she would be blackballed, I guess, and nobody would want to deal with her. But she and there's been conversation and arguing back and forth and what have you. But Impact gave her that belt, man. They put the belt on her in the middle of all that, by the way. Mm-hmm. And that was when I saw that, I was like, holy cow. So I've heard some rumors here and there that she's talked to WWE. I don't know that for a fact. I've just heard,
mm-hmm.
And so that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did pick her up,
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? That's a tough one to talk about. She's done some really good stuff. The whole situation, how things ended with Impact, was rather embarrassing and unprofessional. So that's going to be a bit of a detriment to some of the other places that might want to.
But in her defense, she's not the first to do that.
No, she's not at all.
And she's not going to be the last. So I mean, I get the reasoning she had was because of the COVID thing and all that stuff,
yeah.
and she was going to get married. She just got married a few weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can. There's a side that's like that wasn't cool. But then there's another side where it's like, I get it. And she's not the first, so
no.
It'll take, wrestling's a weird business, man. It's,
Now, do you think we're possibly going to see her end up in AEW? I mean, her dad's there right now.
Her dad's there.
Yeah.
Let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
The guys like Cody is, and Dusty and Tully was they had a relationship there that wasn't a bad relationship. Dusty knew, I think, I'm not sure, but I think Joe broke Dusty in or has something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Blanchards and the Rhodes family, there's a long, history there. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Tessa did show up at AEW.
I would like to see that. They definitely need a shot in the arm in their women's division right now, for sure. They're a heck of a lot going for them.
You don't think? I think they've actually built up their women's division.
I thought they did before this COVID thing, but I think it wiped out all their foreign wrestlers that were there, and it left them with the lower tiered American wrestlers, and then two of them got injured. So without Sheeta, I thought the division has been a little bit weak at the moment. 6 months ago, I would have thought better shape, but right now it's a little bit weak. I don't know.
They've been like a few weeks ago. I saw a match with Thunder Rosa and
yes.
Is that Ivelisse?
Serena
no, okay. Well, yes, And that was a good match. And then the following week they came back with Ivelisse, and they have the girl Ty
Conti
from NXT. So I think they've been adding some people in there, which is I don't know if they're under contract or not. No, but
Taya Conti is, but with Thunder Rosa is not.
Right. So I mean, it looks like they're trying to build up something there. But again, like you said, if they brought in Tessa, man, that would
that'd be a great shot in the arm.
That would really. Right.
Okay. Well, you know what? You gave us the perfect segue for the next. Oh, did we finish? Yeah. Okay. You gave us the perfect segue for the next family. Let's talk about the Rhodes family. We got Dusty Rhodes, we got Dustin Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes. So first of all, Dusty Rhodes. Come on, guys. I'm sure everybody here could tell us something cool or something about Dusty Rhodes they really liked. Savio, you got anything with Dusty Rhodes in your head?
I met him here in Puerto Rico one time that he come down. I never had the chance to work with him. Head of a hand, what I see from him in videos and stuff like that. I mean, he was over. He know how to talk to the people. He had the people in his pocket. You know, he know how to manage the fans. And well, I don't have the chance to work with him. Also, I was having the chance to work with Flair one time here in Puerto Rico too, but they switched the card because of some story that we was doing locally. But I mean, I had the chance to work with Dustin. Matter of fact, with his character of Goldust, when we work in WWF, they just have him sitting there every Monday night and never was on TV. I remember one time I asked him, "What's going on with you?" And he said, "They don't know what to do with. They want to do with me." So what do you don't know? You know, I said, "I know what I can do with you." He said, "You really?" I said, "I'm gonna talk to Pat." I said, "Talk to Pat." So I went to a match, and I come back, and here Pat asked me about. Dustin told me that you know what to do with him on his character. I said, "Yeah, well, I have an idea that we could do something to build them up." He said, "Okay, get ready. You guys going in." So we sit down and we start talking, and that's when the Goldust start doing his stuff, you know, and we start building the characters slow till he just run. And then after that, he forget about me, but that's okay. I still love him. I still love him.
But who's keeping track?
Yeah.
At least he didn't do you bad like Hulk Hogan would have.
I remember by that time Dakota, his daughter, was just a baby, and I was, you know, soon I arrived at the building, I dropped my bag and run towards her, and I was with her hanging all over the place. We were into play wrestling and stuff like that. And now she's a grown, you know, woman, and bless her. And Terry too, the mother. Was a goodly, you know, when we are there, we have fun.
Okay.
Cool.
Chief, you got a Dusty Rhodes memory story thought?
Yeah, well, I think last episode I talked about Dusty quite a bit, and the feud with Superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Probably one of my early memories of Dusty, but yeah, great talker. You know, probably in the top 3 of all time, I would say, for sure. And the match that I think it's been a year maybe a year and a half now. The match between Dustin and Cody, I thought was excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. The first AEW pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah, that match was very well cool, lots of blood, and it just, that match very much like these are Dusty's kids.
Rudy, you got any memories, thoughts, things about Dusty Rhodes?
I use Dusty as an example when I talk to my kids about gimmicks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You know, when he showed up at WWF, they gave him the Pizza Man thing or whatever. And from what I understand, and from what I understand, you know, that was kind of like as a rib of some type from Vince. You know, mm-hmm. They gave him the older lady to be his valet. Meanwhile, everybody else has Sherry Martel.
Yeah.
These hot chicks and stuff. And from like I said, from what I understand, that was like a jab from Vince, but he made it work.
Yeah.
He made it work, and he was over just as Macho Man was, or anybody else. He was, if a guy, what I tell my guys is, if Dusty can do it, why can't anybody else? And then that may be a reach, but it's just putting the effort in,
Okay, fair enough. Andy, anything pops in your head about Dusty?
I would say, and I'm going to kind of get back to Rudy's point too. For me, again, a lot of the early stuff on Dusty was the history books, was the magazines.
Yeah.
You're reading especially about like the Flair versus Rhodes feuds, and we talked about that in some of the past episodes. Most recently about the feuds. 100% what Rudy said. Like with Dusty and his initial WWF run is, or not initial, because I mean he was there before, but. With this one, with the whole comment thing is making it work. And the only thing I'm going to kind of disagree on, I agree with Rudy in the sense that, you take what you're given, you give it 110%, you make, you do the best of it with the time you have, whatever you got. That's that. I think that's pro wrestling 101 in terms of, working within the company, working with the gimmick. I don't know that, anybody, I mean, we talk about, I don't know if we hear it as much, but we talk about that X factor in wrestling. There's a certain charisma, the certain it. Maybe can't always describe it, but when you see it, you can go like, that's it. And I think Dusty is like probably one of the definitive embodiments of having that it, that having that personality that's larger than life, the personality that can connect with the audience, that can get that emotional response, that he can, the promos, you look at all the Dusty fans, you look at the people that can recite Dusty promos verbatim. Wow, like it, it sucks that he's gone, because I mean, you can tell his handprints all over NXT, and you talk to more of this current generation of superstars, and Dusty helped me with this. Dusty was here for this. Dusty. So much positive stuff that, man, it's like, it's a shame he's gone. But I've recently seen quite a few things about Mount Rushmores of wrestling, and I think it'd be pretty hard pressed not to put Dusty on there.
Okay, that's fair. Now, I'm not going to reiterate the story I must have said 2 or 3 times already about the first Dusty Rhodes thing. I'm not going to talk about that one again. Okay, that was
mistaken identity.
Enough. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. What I will talk about is a year after that, when now I do know the difference between Dusty Rhodes and Hulk Hogan. Now that I know the difference between them, I come across a videotape in my local video store. Yes, there was a store that rented videos, kids. It's gone. But anyways, there was a place I rented a video. It was called I Like to Hurt People. So I put this thing in, and it was the most ridiculous. I didn't realize the encapsulation of Dusty Rhodes was he was one of the most ridiculous people talking in that entire thing. The way he talked and carried on about his upcoming match, I was like, I don't understand, but as videotapes started to become available, once again, we weren't getting very much wrestling that wasn't Canadian or local. As things were starting to become available and I was purchasing tapes and renting tapes, I got to see more and more of Dusty Rhodes and really enjoyed what I saw a lot. The only goofy thing I will tell you, you made a point. You said people can say his promos verbatim. I remember one time, I was many times forcing my wife to watch wrestling, and yes, for her, it is forcing her to watch it. And we're watching it, and one day she said she didn't really understand Dusty Rhodes, like why these people loved him so much. So I managed to find a few things about him, and she kind of got it. But I started doing the hard times thing for 2 weeks straight about anything. I would drop something and explain how it was hard times for me. And in his voice. And I went on for so long with that. She just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Now, we had Dustin Rhodes come out of this family. It's a hard measure with Dustin Rhodes. There are some people will tell you that he was a great superstar, but then there are people that also, on the flip side, say that he didn't anywhere measure up to his dad. I'm not sure how to approach that one because I've loved a lot of Goldust and I've loved a lot of what he's done now. So I'm on the fence about that one. You guys want to weigh in a bit about Dustin? I know Savio had a great story about him, but did you guys think that he kind of fell? Because that's happened in the history of wrestling quite a bit too, where the big name father, next people fall down, as compared to their father. What did you guys think of Dustin versus? Somebody's got a TV on.
Yeah.
Rudy, you got a TV on?
Yeah, but I'm lowering it. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so
Yeah, mute it. I can repeat it.
Okay, so Dustin. Some people claim that he hasn't really lived up to what his father was, not even in the same stratosphere. I don't know. I think he has in some ways, but I want to know what you guys think. Has Dustin gone up in that echelon, or has he kind of fallen short of it?
Well, my point of view, with all you guys talking about the Dustin it was a different totally era. I mean, you have the tiny matches, easy matches. You don't have to do rush nothing. You have to work the people. You make the people cheer for you. You make the people get up from those. You work with the timing, and you have a professional on this side and a professional on the other side. They know when to stop, to look at the people, to work the people, to continue to the next step. These days, the kids don't look, they don't even look at the fans. I mean, well, they don't have fans in the arena now, but let's talk about let's go 1 year back. They don't even look at the people. They just continue doing as a robot, spots. Hey, you work for those fans, and Dustin had that. The first thing he do is say hello to the people, because he talked to the people when his interviews. He put the people in. The son of the plumber. You go in. You are, and he never said, "I'm the son of the president of the United States." Right. The son of the plumber. So the son of the carpenter or the mechanic, whatever. I mean, people that you love, and with the charisma that he have, by that time, it's different to connect. It's not, of course, it's not Dustin or his brother at all, because it's a different era, but what they doing, the people are buying it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
When I work with Dustin in WWF, when I work with Dustin in WWF, I mean, that's the way we do. We all time wrestling. I never rush things. Let's go here. Let's solve. Let's work with come back to the next spot and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Remember house shows that we are. I mean, I work with Dustin in Stamford, Connecticut. Was a Sunday. I remember that like was yesterday, man. And somebody said, "Oh, Vince is in the house." So good, he's there every time. But we have a hell of a match. Dustin and me, we come. I mean, we get. Was a lot of pain in that area too. But we have the people in our hands. People went down and up and down. Here we come to the dressing room. He's in the back. He shake our hands. He said, "What a hell of a match." I mean, he was happy. I said to him, "Put us in the pay-per-view." He never put Dustin and me in the pay-per-view. But I mean, together. They put it in different matches, but yeah. Dustin and me together, never. And I have great matches with Dustin. I mean, the time is different right now. Whatever they do there, I don't follow nothing of wrestling, just a little bit here there. But sit down and to watch whatever television show is hard for me now. I'm too busy doing all the stuff that I don't have the time to sit down. But the little thing that I watch, Dustin and his brother, they're both great hands, great people. They've been working with the fans. The story that they building is the way they need to do it right now. I mean, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Now there's a great thing you said too. Timing, right? I mean, Dusty Rhodes could go up and do an interview and tell you to put your hand on the television to join in with him. A wrestler today who did that would be mocked so hard it would never work. But back then,
exactly. It's like, please be with me, brother. Put your hand on the television right now, please. And the people
preacher.
just do it. And the night you have a full house just for that interview. Full house.
Excellent. Now, you know what? You brought up Cody. Let's talk about Cody here for a second. And
Cody,
and I just want to weigh in really quickly and let you guys tell me what you think too. I've loved Cody Rhodes. I mean, I was a little skeptical at the beginning of this. He was that Stardust character, which was seemed like a clown thing, and then he was the handsome guy with the mask, and none of that spoke out as like main event status type of guy. It seemed like the mid-card act, right? So when he came in, he came here in Edmonton a few times and wrestled, and he was pretty amazing. And I wondered how that would translate. And then I watch him constantly on AEW, and I'm very impressed. He seems to me to be this guy who can wrestle the style of now, but he has the sensibility. He's drawing in a lot of the old school stuff.
Storytelling. It's a mix of the modern day stuff with the old school storytelling.
Yeah. And the only thing I find weird about him, and maybe you guys will not see this, but this is what I see being a fan of him, his brother, and his father, is sometimes I think he desperately wants to be his father too much, where you find himself blading constantly when it's not really needed. You find him, like last week they got into a dog collar match for absolutely no reason. There was absolutely no reason or build up, but it just seems like he wants to get under his belt all the things his dad did. And that's my only detriment, is the guy is scarring himself up as a young guy. He is constantly cut a lot, and in matches that it doesn't make sense or it doesn't even be needed whatsoever. That's my only detriment for him right now, is because it's just not needed some of the times, and he's leaving bad scars on himself. You can see it on his face constantly. What do you guys think of Cody Rhodes? Chief, why don't we start with you?
Well, yeah, I somewhat agree with that. I mean, he, even with some of the the names they've been copywriting, I think he's just trying to fulfill, keep his dad's legacy alive, maybe not so much be him or pay homage to his, to his style and his career, the way he did things. But it's like the match I referred to between him and Dustin a couple of years ago. That's kind of touching on what Savio said. That's what made that exciting, because like Savio said, you got so many things. It's like robots in there now, and they just do spot. Back in the days, people emotionally connected to Dusty. There was, like I said a couple weeks ago, good wrestling should be drama. That's what fills the seats. You want to be emotionally invested in this character and feel like you're part of the match. The fans do when they're cheering him on, helping him bring him back, which I think is lost on a lot of today's wrestlers, where they just go in there and ignore the crowd. They might acknowledge the crowd on the way to the ring, but then they get in the ring and they just wrestle. And a heel should be a heel all the way through the match. A face should be a face. And the crowd should be emotionally invested in that face winning that match. And I think when you just have spot now, like you look at somebody like Ricky Morton or Dusty, who played to the crowd, help me. They're looking at the crowd, bleeding, reaching for the crowd as the heel has them on a rear chin lock or something, but they're saying, I need your help. The crowd would cheer, and then they would come back. I think that's what's lost on a lot of today's crowd. But I think that's one thing that Cody does try to bring back. And in that match a couple of years ago, I think that's why that stood out for me. The match with him and Dustin had emotion, and people were emotionally invested in that and cared about the match, and it cared about the people in it. And that's what made that so special. Compared to, so I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of Cody stuff. I don't see a lot of AEW stuff lately. So I didn't know that he was blading a lot. But yeah, I think if you do overdo it, then it kind of loses its meaning. But if you do it, special circumstances and a blow off, to bring extra drama to a feud. But not just for the sake of blood.
Oops, sorry. Like I've said, I've always been a fan of all kinds of wrestling. And I think some of the coolest things you do see, there are some great matches where guys are bleeding and blood can become a factor. I've not become one of those guys who poo-bahs it, but I do find sometimes it seemed in the run of his title defenses and things like that. There were times against opponents that it just didn't have any, it didn't even have a room or made a lot of sense that he would just get blood, you know? And last week I had to say was the most confusing thing for me is like a dog collar match was not even the main event of last week's program, you know, and there was absolutely no buildup. It's just the 1 week the guy said, fine, next week we're having a dog collar match from two guys who never carried a dog collar in any of the wrestling thing. There was the guy who
no reason at all. No jumping on you with the chain or drag you by the neck or some blah blah blah.
How about this, Savio? The guy who proposed the match was the guy who was always running away, yet he proposes that they be chained to each other. Yet he's the guy who powders out every time they meet each other.
Right.
That didn't make any sense either. So
maybe what they have in their head other than the story of storyteller or to have the fans in, they're looking for the rating.
Yeah. It definitely is
they're
that. No, it definitely is a shot for the ratings.
So let's do whatever we have to do to get a number, you know, but that's gonna hurt yourself. But later you're gonna run out of gimmicks, and you know what's gonna happen. The numbers anyway is going down.
Yeah,
true.
You know,
that being said, it was one of the best dog collar matches.
To treat a good story.
Yeah.
Pardon?
All right, Andy.
You know what? I think most of kind of my similar thought process on Cody has kind of been said. I mean, from the fact of him being here, working with him in PWA, he was always very cool. You know, just the guys. Well, I mean, he worked primarily with Michael Richard Blaze. They had great matches. It's a shame that he hasn't signed Michael Richard Blaze to AEW. But what do I know? I'm not biased at all. And then. I agree, you know, and you and I have had this discussion a little bit both on and off of the podcast about you know, if he's trying to do too much, if he's trying to be a little bit like Dusty. But I think what Savio just said to me encapsulated things perfectly, at least with that dog collar match, where you know maybe I just kind of thought similar, but the way Savio put it to me, it was just like, yeah, like that's it. It's just. It's like WWE in the sense that, okay, we're getting that quick hit. It's like dog collar match. Okay, well, that hasn't been on TV. WWE hasn't done that. Okay, we're going to do dog collar match, and we're going to get color. Boom, that should do it. But as we went back, and you know, as we talked about, there's no build, there's no story, so you're not investing. That time's not there, and it's you know it's and with the people I'm sharing here with. I know that you've either told me this or that I know you'll agree in some respect, but professional wrestling, as we talk about storytelling and storytelling and build. It's like sex, and that's what happens, right? I mean, you know, the foreplay, the build up before you get the big finish, and then there's your pop. Wow, that's awesome, that's great. This is the best feeling. Like I'm satisfied. Whereas like with this. It's almost like no foreplay, no nothing. It's like, you know, this is like, okay, 30-second porn, finish, done. There's no build up. There's no, it's like, okay, that was cool. Yeah, that was awesome. But now what? Now what are you going to show me? Now what are you going to do?
Okay.
And I think that's part of the problem with society in general, right? And again, going back to society is, you know, if you're not going to do it in 90 characters or 190 characters, you're not going to do it in 15 seconds or a minute and a half, people are going to tune out. And, you know, and Savio says, it's like, okay, well, they're doing it for the TV ratings. Well, that might pop the rating for this week, but eventually you're going to run out of ideas. Then what?
Hot shot booking is what we used to call back
then. Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna get an immediate short-term effect, but then long-term it hurts, you know, over time.
Yep.
As a middle-aged North American man, all I can ask is, what's foreplay? All right, moving on. All right. So Cody Rhodes, very interesting. Now I kind of been saving this one for a bit. Let's talk about the Colon family. Okay. Carlos Colon and his family. And I'll tell you my first exposure, once again, magazines for the longest time. I have to say, I have never actually seen, because there's also hard to find videos of a full Carlos Colon match. I've never seen one. Yeah, I have yet to find them, and I will. I'll look for them. I keep searching around, but there's so many. I got a giant list.
Carlos and Brody. I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
Okay, I will look those up on YouTube. I have yet not to really see them, but I have seen some of his work. I do remember, and I've mentioned this many times, that when I was a 13, 14-year-old boy in Canada, we had something called the Financial News Network.
Mm-hmm.
And it would run financials all week, but on Saturdays it showed kung fu movies and wrestling from Puerto Rico, which, okay, I'd always heard about it, read about it. Because it was also in Spanish, I don't know any of the stories or things that were going on, and I'd listen for the names, and I knew the names from the magazine, so that part I could follow along with. My most vivid memory, of course, was Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody hucking chairs at each other in the middle of an arena, like in the top. Some crazy, wild stuff. But I always wanted to know more about Carlos Colon. And so first of all, let's talk about Carlos Colon, because I'm going in as, I know he was a legendary guy. I know he had these great matches. I know he had a giant feud with Abdullah the Butcher. What do you guys tell me? You guys tell me about Carlos Colon first.
I think you should start with Savio. Or at least
Okay, Savio.
Far and away.
Means Carlos Colon.
All due respect, Chief. I think this, yeah.
Well, what I remember when I started watching wrestling and they started here 74, 75, the top guys was Jose Miguel Perez Sr., rest in peace in soul. Gorilla Monsoon, which was one of the top heels. He was corporate in the company between Jovica and him and Carlos. In Carlos, I mean, was Jose Rivera also a guy from Puerto Rico, and Carlos was in that going up when they bring Abdullah the Butcher, and Abdullah the Butcher is the one that made Carlos Colon, because you have this big huge monster coming to tormentate and finish with a local one. So they use the violin in where you got Abdullah wanna finish and the guy bring a fork, so whoa, you start getting a real heat with Abdullah the Butcher. I remember one of the stories was Daddy Dutch Mantel and Franklin, the Cowboys. This is a television was building to the arena. Of course, I don't know that because that was my beginning. But then you have those guys with a big bag of coins, saying these are $10,000 of coins, and whoever beat them, they will get the coins. What happened here on television was Carlos and I believe Jose, maybe I forget who was his partner in that moment, but Frankie Lane and Daddy Dutch Mantel, they lose the match, but they cheat and they jump on Carlos and Billy Jose Rivera. They turn babyface Huracan Castillo Sr., that television right there. And the crowd, I remember the crowd was a small crowd on television, just like one bleacher. This is in a studio, and the people went crazy there. So the night the show, packed shows. So they start packing shows left and right with the Americans and start making money. The tickets was what, $5 and $2, by that time. And they have great stories on television. Carlos Colon then met Abdullah the Butcher, world champion. I mean, Puerto Rican champion first, because they went and attacked the nationality. You have a Puerto Rican with the Puerto Rican belt. Then you had this outsider guy stealing the belt. I mean, now you go to the pride.
The pride, yeah.
Exactly, proud. And when Carlos went to get the title back, of course, the people was there. Then come the world title. Then the universal title. But at the meantime, you start having matches with Abdul Butcher in where a boat wire match. You got a lumberjack match. You have all kind of gimmick matches. But every Saturday night, you have a pack house. They're making tons of money. And Carlos was making, the only thing they call him the acrobatic guy. The only thing he do was a start and touching his feet.
The cartwheel, yeah, and then the jump
cartwheel.
up, kind of like David Lee Roth touching his toes. Yeah.
Yeah, but I, who I think he stole that from Jack Veneno in Dominican Republic. But Carlos wrestled as a heel in Canada as Carlos Belafonte.
Yes.
He wrestled over there in Canada. He was a heel too. He made a tag team with Abdullah the Butcher in Japan too. Against Mil Mascaras and all those guys over there. When internet wasn't on, now it's kind of you have to stay where you at.
Yeah.
Because everything is switched. But by the time Carlos Colon was the big superstar here in Puerto Rico, everywhere we go and Carlos faced somebody with a big name, was a good house there. Actually, when the TNT arrived in Capital Sport Promotion, the gimmick was that I want to face Carlos Colon. I never talked. I had the profe, Angelo Rivera, which was the manager. So what we looking at was for the opportunity of, to get the belt. And Carlos always ignored it. What happened here, I was on television for almost close to a year, beating everybody. Everybody that come to me, I beat him up. Some story here, but just television. So the people already want to see this guy. So here come the story with Carlos, and where I put the Cobra Clutch on Carlos. I don't want to wake the foam in the mouth. Jovica come to wake him up, a big mess. So we call the attention of the champion. So now we want a championship. We went to the Colion in Puerto Rico, Roberto Clemente, and we packed the place, and we continue with the fight. Then later I turned baby face with Carlos too, and come back to be strong there. I mean, he helped me, of course. Him and Vader helped me my career. But Carlos is a huge name here in Puerto Rico. Matter of fact, the other day, last week, I upload a video. It's a funny. I coming from this arena and I coming outside. It was kind of a dark. And this girl, she's in the 20s or something, and she says to me before, "Hey Carlitos, how you doing?" So when she said that to me, I started laughing and I put my phone as I record this. So I just record. I say, "Hey, how you doing?" And she said, "Hey, I remember you when I was a leader." I say, "Who I am?" She said, "Carlitos Colon." I said, "Yeah." So I put the video on Facebook and YouTube, and fans are laughing. Everybody, they're happy. I make them happy with that video. And I laugh. Before when I start, I was kind of a mad with the company there. But now when you grow and you been in promotion, you be in the other side of the desk, working with all these great people in wrestling, you learn. You have to learn. So, maybe he did what he did in a few other times. Some bad decisions, some good decisions, but there are decisions anyway. And you learn from that. And I learned from what happened to me in their company. When I left the company the first time, the only person that I talked was to him, because he's the one that talked in the beginning. So when I leave the company, I say I need to talk to him. I didn't even talk to Jovica. I talk to Jose. I talk to Carlos, and he know already that I'm leaving. And when I come back to the company, was through another person that I come back. But Carlos in Puerto Rico, you mentioned Carlos Colon, and everybody know who is Carlos Colon.
Oh, okay, in the main part, like in the biggest time of his hype, right? Did people who weren't really wrestling fans, did you just knew him? In how big did his name transcend into the general public of Puerto Rico?
Big. Carlos is a huge name here.
Okay.
Like I say, you mentioned Carlos Colon. Everybody know. Everybody, the people in Puerto Rico was a tradition going every Saturday to the wrestling, because those years of the 70s, 80s, 90s maybe was still strong too in the 90s. But that television here was was wrestling Saturday and Sunday. You don't have like now. You have many sports. You have many things here there. No, Puerto Rico before have 5 channels maybe, and one of them have wrestling. So every Saturday at noon, Puerto Rico stops wrestling. So when the big shows coming, the big anniversary shows coming up, I mean they bring a lot of guys from the States. Hey, you have a pack houses. Of course, Carlos Colon is no time in Puerto Rico.
Okay, Chief, what do you know of Carlos Colon? If you wanted to tell me about him.
Yeah, even a few. What was it, Savio? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they brought Carlos back out in Invader, didn't they? And they were like 70.
Yeah,
and I think it was the biggest crowd that WWC had in like a decade or something.
Right.
But he still drew. You know,
draw. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, he was definitely. I mean, they were filling stadiums over there then, and he was definitely like Hulk Hogan would have been here in the '80s. Like, yeah, I think everybody on the island knew who Carlos Colon was. He transcended wrestling there for sure.
Okay.
One of the stories that they did time was a tag team match where Abdullah the Butcher threw what is maybe the right ammonia,
Bleach,
whatever.
Ammonia, yeah.
Bleach, yeah, in his eyes, and he was blind. And at home, he had in the eyes, sitting down there, can see, blah 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 blah. All of a sudden, like Trump, he happened, and he had the revenge against Abdullah the Butcher in the pack house.
Oh wow. Okay, Andy. Well, if you want to tell me about Carlos Colon.
You know what? Just I think because of the experiences from Savio and Chief, I mean, mine will be relatively limited. I mean, it'll be more magazines, and then there's not as much there. I would like to make myself the segue into talking about going down the family lineage and bringing up Carlito and Eddie. Stacy was in there for a little while. I'm not even sure how many. At least for Carlos's kids, was just the 3 of them? Was there Eddie, Carly, and Stacy?
Eddie, Carly, and Stacy. Yeah. Orlandito is the cousin.
Is the cousin? Okay, okay. So I know for me, so for again, my time being kind of 99 to 2003, that was where Carly was. I don't know when he broke in, but I mean it had to be somewhere in that time frame because I know Carly was starting to get the big push. Early, kind of like 99, 2000. And then at one point in there, they brought Stacy in. So Stacy was involved. Funny with Stacy. I obviously I haven't seen what she looks like in 20 some odd years. She was a very attractive woman way back when. And I was disappointed I never got a chance to meet her. Although apparently I met her one time at this infamous bar named Loopy's and I didn't even realize it was her, but whatever. Stacy was there. And then I think towards the end, around 2002, 2003, I think that's when Eddie kind of broke in or somewhere in there. He was coming in right around that time. So kind of be like the early 2000s is when Carly and Eddie were really starting to kind of break their teeth and coming in. And again, baby faces, because that's where you start, right? I mean, unless you're Tully Blanchard, that's how you're coming in. And that's what I remember of them. I mean, that was the direct competition to us, what we were doing. That was kind of the family level on the WWC side.
Savio, tell us a bit about Carlito. Yes. He hit the big WWE. Go ahead.
I remember Carly and Eddie. I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old, maybe. Running in the office, they just coming from the college, and I remember they have white shirts, all dirty, and I say that you are the cleaner people here. You know what you look at your shirts, and they're just look at me and keep running. They playing kids, and now I have the chance to work with both. I work with Carly. We are doing right now. I mean, this stuff is already have the virus have everybody down. But we start a deal with the WWC and IWA again. something strong in where we packed 2 houses. We just the have me in their house, and I have Ray in my house. So we have a good, great, money making that night. So after that, the virus just closed everything down. We have many storylines to tell. And Eddie right now is the top heel of the company. The Carlos Colon. Carlos went heel in WWE. Carlos don't like that too much, but they making money, so they're happy. So now Eddie's out, Orlandito's out, Carly of course is out of there, and but they're great kids. I love those kids. They're very respectful. I have the chance to book Carly in different places that I go. When somebody asks me about him, of course I book him. The other day, I call Eddie to book him in a different place to sign him and stuff like that. We help each other. Just waiting for this virus, the leave us alone so we could come back and do good business. And but they're great guys. And in the ring, they know what they're doing. I mean, WWE just put them as a double champion, I believe, in a couple of times, and that's good. Anyway, they put belts on everybody now because that sell toys.
Yeah.
And that's good. But anyway, they're good hands and good great people, and and they have their mind open to the business, in where they want to make money. They want, and Puerto Rico is still a big place to have a good story and have a good run and still to make good money.
Okay. All right. Chief, how about you? Working with any of the younger Colognes?
I haven't worked with any of the younger Colognes. I watched them like everybody else grow up and watched them on TV, but I don't have any personal interaction.
Okay. Do you have any memories like wrestling that you've seen of them that just stuck out to you that you wanted to throw out there to maybe for the casual fan who's not seen any of them?
Most, of course, most of them are probably WWE memories, but I do remember. It's probably been, I guess longer than I thought. Probably like 6 or 7 years ago. They like Savio said, WWC still brings in, tries to bring in a big name. At least they were for like their anniversary show every year. And I remember Carlito wrestled Sting on one of the anniversary shows. I think probably 6 or 7 years ago now.
Well, that's pretty darn cool.
Okay. So it might have been a little longer.
So there's definitely a family of note for sure. I mean, a lot of guys coming out of there with a lot of talent, telling a lot of good stories. Now there's lots more families. I know I'm skipping some. There's definitely
there's a lot. We only have so much time.
But we do only have so much time. Maybe we could come back another time because we still haven't even talked about all the Samoans. Most of them are related, and there's a dozen stories right there from a dozen different guys. But I did very
quick. Hey, quick one. I work with Alpha. I work with Sika. Work with Junior for Rikishi. You work with Yoko. Work with Sam. I've been with work with the one in MLW that is with me.
Jacob Fatu.
Don't work with him, but working backstage.
Okay, Jacob. Jacob Fatu.
Really?
Jacob Fatu.
I work with Jacob. Work with his dad too. And I work with The Rock. So I've been working with him. I work with his Johnson, wrestling
Rocky Johnson.
I've been working with almost except the kids, but I've been working with all the Samoans.
That's awesome.
Back in 1988, I actually worked for Leah Maivia, The Rock's grandmother, and The Rock was like a little kid back then.
Nice.
Well, you know what? Let's talk a bit about that family then.
Great people.
Yeah, I worked for Leah over in Hawaii for Polynesian Pro Wrestling, and Lars Anderson was the booker back then. Savio, you probably worked over there too at some point.
All right. But the Samoans, what a hell of a hand. What a hell of a people. I love those guys. It's like when we are in WWF, we talking about, hey, we are like this. We come from an island. We have to take care of each other. So that's what we did, And I worked with them in Japan as a tag team. I worked with them here in Puerto Rico, and man, I love those Samoans. Great people, love them.
It's great, this family stretches back from, you have the Wild Samoans in like the 70s, and all these other guys coming along all through the years. You mentioned some of them, Yokozuna, and you have them reaching all the way till today, and you go as far as you got Roman Reigns, and you've got Jacob Fatu, two guys who are, champions or the very top of their cards in competing countries. And this just seems like a very rich tradition of guys in this. How many more do we have coming down the line? You have Nia Jax, even, is somebody we didn't even mention in this family.
Yeah.
The only one I ever feel sorry about is poor Samoan Joe, the only Samoan big wrestler who's not related to any of them. So I'm not sure how that happened, but somehow he squeaked in there. But the last thing, we've talked about families, and we're going to talk about some more obviously down the line. I think we're going to have to do another family with other families.
Absolutely.
But this is the part where I want to make it a little interesting. And this is where I'm going to talk to the three of you, and I want some honest feelings about this right now, okay? You've all had long careers. You've all dealt with promotions that were built from somebody and their family. Is it somewhat frustrating sometimes to go into a territory or a business or a place where it is dominated by a family, and you see that no matter what skill level, and I'm not saying think of any particular family, but any skill level of maybe the promoter's sons or son or daughter or whatever is being pushed to, maybe they're not deserved. Do you ever have that frustration coming into a place where you've dealt with a family thing structure like that, where you're like, okay, the good old family dynamic, how do I find a place in here since I'm not related? Have you guys ever felt like that ever in any territory you've ever been in? And I'll start with you, Chief. Or sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you put your hand up, so I was going to give you that. As a Canadian, I had to give the freebie.
Okay.
The polite respect.
Yeah, the polite respect thing. So I'll give you that one first.
Sorry, Chief. The teacher pick you up, and then I come to school. Oh my God, these Puerto Ricans never change. No, I don't have that experience.
Okay.
Because by the time the kids, Carly and Eddie, was just kids, I have the story with the dad, and he was part of owner of the company, so of course, and he was hot too because everything was running around him. Probably if was the different story. Carlos maybe don't success the big time success that he had in Puerto Rico. I don't know. In the other side, you have a guy, I mentioned it, like the invader, they know how to take the people in his pocket. I learned how to work with the people and bring the people on my side, and that makes you more natural wrestler. But I never have that experience in where I get to the territory and maybe the sons, they are good, but they are not that good. The people probably to have to push it to the throw because that is kids, and let's see what happened here, because maybe the story that they try to run don't go with them, and they feel that it is. But that when the numbers come up, when the tickets are sold, if the tickets don't sold, I mean, change that person right away, do different something, to make it better. But I know how the experience of that matter. Probably a bunch of wrestlers from the 70s and 80s, of course, have that problem maybe.
Okay. Chief, have you ever had that kind of situation where you don't even have to name the territory, obviously, but just somewhere along the lines you went into a place where, okay, it's definitely a family thing and I'm getting paid by this guy to put over his no talent son? Or did you ever get those frustrations? Because I know it does happen. I've heard many wrestlers talk about that.
Never really frustrated. I mean, there's been places where I brought in where I'm a big guy, weigh 360 pounds, where they wanted me to put somebody over to help get them over, but I didn't have a problem with it. That's what they were paying me to come in and do. I think back in the day, like it probably would, like when I started in '86, like at the tail end of the territories, a lot of it, if they were successful, like let's say like the Von Erich boys, nobody's going to complain because they're getting pushed, but they are over with the crowd and they're selling tickets, and you got paid on the gate back then.
Yeah.
So it was just like when Hulk Hogan got big in the WWF, everybody wanted, they did A shows and B shows. Everybody wanted to be on the shows that Hogan was on every day because they were going to be the bigger house. The people on those shows are going to make more money. So if the people that are being pushed, even if it's like the promoters' kids or something, if they're actually legit over and they're drawing houses, back then nobody's going to complain because they're making money. Yeah, I could see if you're pushing somebody, you're pushing one of your kids, and they're not drawing, then people would have a complaint with it. But the promoters, even the ones that were fathers back then, I think were pretty smart and knew, they want to make money. I think that's why you saw Greg Gagne as AWA world champion.
Not that they didn't try. Not that they didn't try.
he wasn't over enough that they were going to draw a big house, so they were going to go that direction. Because in the end, the business and the old school promoters, even if they had their kids in the business, they were about making money.
True. Okay. And last one I'm going to ask Andy, you've been around some companies. Have you ever seen that? Like, I know it does happen. Maybe it doesn't affect you whatsoever, but has it ever?
Maybe like to really kind of go through, if I went through a little more detailed history of my career, maybe I'd come up with something. But, as you pose the question, then listening to Savio, listening to Chief, like even for me, like I agree from the business standpoint where, if the family is there and they're doing well and they're making money, no one's going to say anything. To me, my thought is that even if you go to a territory, or if you go to promotion where it's not your family run or the family's on top, chances are that promotion is going to have that core group. So they may not be blood, but they're going to be that core group. So one way or another, you're kind of butting heads to get into, either the family circle or the inner circle, no pun intended to AEW, but you know what I mean? There's going to be some core group there that coming in, if you're 360 pounds and you're the chief, it's going to be maybe a little easier to get in there than somebody that's 5'10", 220 or whatever. But at the same time, I know for me, for my mindset, especially back then, as I got more experience, wherever I was going, I didn't, I just wanted to wrestle. I wanted to get paid, and I had a goal I wanted to get to. So I don't care if you were the promoter's son. I don't care if you're the promoter's best friend. If you're on top, if you're the best, you're who I want to work with, and then we'll work our way down from there. So to me, I understand where there could be the frustration, especially, kind of back in the more the territory days where guys might feel like, oh, well, I should be on top spot, but so-and-so's kid is there or whatever. But at the end of the day, that's fine. You can be there, but if that's who's going to be there, I want to be on the other end. Okay. And if it's the promoter's best friend, well, cool. Then I want to be working the promoter's best friend. Whatever. Okay. And at the end of the day, it's still a business. So as long as you're getting paid, and if it's back in the day where you're getting paid by the gate, well, then hell yeah, you want to be up at the top. You want to be with the best. Otherwise, if you're still getting whatever you're getting paid, then to me, I want to be working with the best. I want to be working with the most over, because that's going to work well for them. Then hopefully that's going to rub off on me. The company does better. I do better as a brand. Everybody wins. That's, good business.
Very good.
Okay. Well, you know what? There are a lot of families we didn't touch on. We could have talked about the McMahons. We could have talked about the Armstrongs. Elio, I think I made a short list. Flares? What else did we miss on that list in case we run out of topics?
We had the Guerreros.
Oh, we did talk about the Guerreros.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else we got in there?
And
Savio.
Okay, we have the Guerreros and the Poffos.
The Poffos, the Funks. Heck, we could have talked about the Briscoes if we wanted to go old school too. Yeah. So we're definitely good. We had enough for another show down the line, guys.
And just because Savio's on here and Chief, and because we got this Puerto Rican connection here that kind of almost outweighs this. I mean, Savio said it. You got the Riveras. There's Savio. There's his brother Dennis. You talked about Perez. There's Jose Miguel Perez Sr. Mira, Mira,
Yes.
and you
yes.
got Jose Jr., Huracan Castillo Sr., Huracan Castillo Jr. I mean, even like the Puerto Rico history and lineage of families and stuff, not as internationally world famous known, but man, there's still a lot of family ties in the Puerto Rican history too.
Are you kidding? I mean, I would love to someday down the road do a whole episode just on Puerto Rican wrestling.
Book
and
that.
talk about some of the great legendary stories, because that would be very fun and very interesting.
Hell
It's
yeah.
a bunch of stories.
We could bring Abdullah on too for that. That would be
Who?
Abdullah the Butcher.
That would be
yeah.
pretty cool.
But even with
So
I mean,
I just want to
not
thank
to
you
disrespect,
guys.
but I'm just saying, just for what's here,
Yeah.
there's all the Puerto Rican wrestling history here. Even would be just incredible.
I would just
I
love
have
to
a
sit
good
back and hear it.
Castillo Jr. Tale I could tell you down the road here, but Savio was there.
All right. Well, you know what?
Good.
Before we get going, I'd like each of you guys to plug all your social media stuff. Tell folks where they can buy T-shirts, where to get a hold of you, whatever stuff, because I'm going to put all the stuff on the links to the show too. But let's give all the people ahead. So, Chief, you want to start yours off?
Yeah, at the Chief Atta on Twitter, and then on Facebook, Chief Attakullakulla and Rod Attakullakulla, 2 different pages there, and then Chief_Attakullakulla on Instagram.
Excellent. Andy?
You know what? Let's go Savio next. I mean, I think you
Savio?
go experience here. I'm the greenhorn here, so
Okay.
let these gentlemen go first.
Savio, what do you want to plug out there, buddy?
Well, and right now we're working with the IWA, so you could check on IWA and all the platform, and in YouTube we have a show every Saturday at noon.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're showing stuff from 2002. So this is the old tapes that we are showing, and on check Andy is on YouTube, IWA Puerto Rico, and Instagram and Facebook, all that, IWA Puerto Rico. You can get me, and of course at Savio Vega on Twitter, at Ninja TNT and on Twitter, and Instagram as at Tio Savio Vega, Facebook as Savio Vega. But listen, guys, I want to plug here quick. The Saturday the 24th, I go with my fruit on Colombia soil. So I'm going to be in the WIG Colombia company pay-per-view. They call it Evolution Online, which is going to be at 7 o'clock local time over there. Eastern time is going to be at 8 o'clock. So they have this pay-per-view because they have the opportunity to do some wrestling. And so I'm going to be in WIG Colombia for this Evolution. And I'm happy to be there. It's going to be the first time the Tio Savio Vega will go there. You know what, Andy? In our times in IWA, they watch everything from IWA in Colombia. At the same time, we watched it here in Puerto Rico, the 2 hours.
Yep.
Saturday and Sunday, watching over there in Colombia. So we are very popular in Colombia. So let's see what happens with this pay-per-view. And it's going to be the beginning of maybe bring the old timers of IWA to Colombia. So be ready.
Hopefully, Colombia, they got enough money they can help fly me all the way down from Canada, because I know that's always been an issue. It's not cheap to fly from Canada to Puerto Rico. Let me tell you.
I bet. Andy, do you want to throw anything out there?
All right, don't worry. We do some.
For me,
I know here what.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, for at Andy Anderson PWA on the Twitter, on Instagram, I'm that guy TCB247. So that's the letters IM THATGUY. I'm that guy 247 T. Wait, I'm that guy TC. I can't even. I'm still laughing. I'm still thinking of Savio stuff here, making me laugh. Let's try this again on the Instagram. I'm that guy. I can't even do my. I'm that guy TCB.
I'm that guy TCB247.
Thank you.
Your son came through. Your son came through.
I'm that guy. There we go.
For you, make it easy for you.
So letters IM THATGUY TCB247. I'm that guy TCB247. As Savio mentioned at the start of the show, you can see me picking up things and putting them down and doing some exercises and reliving my glory days of wrestling, especially my fun times in Puerto Rico.
And only a boy from Winnipeg would
Nice.
put taking care of business somewhere in the initials. All right. Folks, we had a great time talking wrestling. And guys, I had a really fun time. This was exciting. We got to talk
you.
about some cool stuff. And I want to thank you guys for popping in. Fans, wrestling history is rich with families. Whether it be families that come from a promoter and having a bunch of offspring who wrestled and made their company, or from brothers and sisters and whatnot, as we've seen, fathers and sons traveling through the wrestling world. And it's been a rich history with some rich stories and a lot of cool stuff. And I just want to say, once again, it was great talking with these guys. People, this COVID stuff, it's going to end someday soon. All I can say is be nice to each other. You know, as the Canadians on here will tell you, it's not that hard. Just be nice. Wash your damn hands. And you know what? Wear a mask only if it's just not to offend somebody else. You know what? Just be cool. Folks, we'll talk to you next week. Elio.
All
say
right,
good night to
fans,
the
we'll
people.
talk to y'all next week.
Thank you. Elio, you talk too much.